Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. I am going to wait just a few moments to make sure that we have sound working tonight because my camera is not behaving. Let's start with that. Yeah, it's not going to the right camera. See how sound is going. I might have to do like we did last week and have log off and log in. Okay, good. But for some reason, it's not going to the right camera, which I actually don't understand. Traveling sucks. So this is going to be a nice short live stream like we normally do, which is going to last until the questions stop coming in. The topic I'm going to cover, which will give everybody a few minutes to get some questions into the comment section so that we can go over all of those, because I do answer every question that comes in. And of course, it freaks out on me. How diversification will keep you broke. And this is something a lot of people, when we're first starting out, don't quite understand. We think we understand it, but every time I bring up the subject, it seems like people answer it the way I used to look at it. A lot of people will quote Warren Buffett or Dave Ramsey or Kevin O'Leary, especially Kevin O'Leary, was that Mr. Wonderful, on you want no more than 20% in one asset class, no more than 5% of your net worth in any one asset. And he really breaks it down. And it makes sense if you have a net worth in the millions or tens of millions. But when you're just starting out, diversifying is the worst thing you can do. And they have most of us convinced that you want some money in a retirement account, some money in a well-diversified stock portfolio, some money in savings, and then we break it up into all these sections. And when we talk about reaching financial freedom, there's really three main paths to do that. Most people know about real estate. That's what most of my content is about. Some people will talk about growing a business and getting it to the size where other people can take it over, so you're not working in the day-to-day. The third is stocks. And when it comes to stock investing, people talk about how diversified you can have it. You can invest in different single stocks. You can invest in groups of stocks. But if you pick a business and stocks and real estate and retirement accounts, your money is going to be so spread out, and you're going to be trying to learn so many different strategies that you're never going to actually have the focus to be successful at one. If we take any of the people that I talked about, from Ramsey, Kris Krohn, Kiyosaki, anybody who's actually reached financial freedom and is very well known, and we look at how they started, none of them started in several different classes, several different asset classes. They focused on one. And this is a quote from Charlie Munger. Warren Buffett has a guy that he's worked with for probably decades. I want to say over 50 years. But Warren Buffett always talked about diversifying because it makes sense once you have wealth. But Charlie Munger, his partner, actually says, focus on one asset class to become wealthy. Once you're wealthy, then you diversify to protect the wealth. And Warren Buffett, the first time I saw that, they were doing a panel where they were sitting together at the same table. And Buffett actually looked like he was upset. Like he just spent 10 or 20 minutes talking about how important it is to diversify. And if you own something like Berkshire Hathaway, which is invested in so many different things, from real estate to businesses and stocks and all the different things that they've invested in, why would his partner say, focus on one? And that's because when we're first starting out, we don't have the bandwidth to invest in different asset classes. We don't even have the bandwidth to invest differently in one asset class. When it comes to stocks, there are so many different ways to invest with dividend stocks. When it comes to growing a business, there's so many different types of businesses you can grow that I'm not going to comment on stocks because I don't invest in them. And I'm not going to talk about businesses because I've started two and both failed. I'm a better employee than I am an entrepreneur. I'm actually not an entrepreneur. I am an investor. I reached financial freedom by working a W-2 job, taking money and putting it to work in real estate. But when I look at real estate, we can wholesale, we can flip, We can use the BRRRR method. We can do buy and hold. We can do short-term rentals, long-term rentals. We can invest locally. We can invest at a distance. We can be so spread out in one asset class that if you were trying all of those different things, you'd probably never get one done well enough to actually be successful at it. If we look at most real estate investors, they usually had one method that worked. Currently, someone like Kris Krohn invests in large syndications, and he takes money in and he puts the money to work for people. But when he started out, he was a buy and hold investor with a very specific strategy of buying a rental property, keeping it for about 7 years before the big capex problems were going to start popping up, and then doing lease to own, where he would sell to the tenants whenever possible. So he had a very specific strategy. Once he became large enough, look at how he diversified. Brandon Turner, BiggerPockets. He starts in Aberdeen, Washington, a tiny little town with a fourplex. He starts with a duplex, buys the fourplex for his daughter Rose so she can have a college investment. If he did the BRRRR method and flipping and wholesaling, he probably never would have got to where he was. Where he's at now, he got involved in syndications. He grew his syndications so large, he stepped down from BiggerPockets because his brand was more effective at doing that than it was being on the podcast. So as an investor who reached financial freedom in 10 years or less, I focused on one type of investing and one type of investing strategy. I buy and hold rental properties. If you want, like in a nutshell, that's the shortest sentence it can be. Buy and hold rental properties. I'm able to diversify in one asset class to protect my portfolio, to protect my wealth, to make it to where not only did I make work optional, but so many things would have to change in the future to make it to where I would have to have a job again that I sleep like a baby, because I know that say, and you couldn't evict. I never lost any sleep over my investments because of the way I structured my portfolio. When people invest in stocks or crypto or a business, building a business with backup plans, reserves. When you invest in crypto, and believe me, I'm not a crypto investor, so I'm not going to actually talk about this like I know what I'm talking about, but there are ways to hedge your bets. There are ways to use margin with stocks and crypto. There are ways to invest in funds so you're not focused on one thing like Tesla, which could drop or it could go up, but you're invested in a fund. So there's several different stocks in there. The asset class that you pick, you can invest in such a way to where you're diversified. Once you reach a certain level of wealth, I'm not there yet. My net worth is about to cross the $3 million threshold. And I think when it hits about 5, then I'll start looking at taking small amounts of my net worth, maybe 1 to 5%, and investing in crypto or stocks or investing in businesses. Because since I don't have the bandwidth to focus on that broad a spectrum of investing, it's going to be gambling. So it's not that stocks or crypto or businesses are gambling. It's that I would be gambling because I don't have the time to learn the way I learned real estate. So here's the quick Cliff Notes version of how I diversified my real estate in such a way that anytime somebody says something like, aren't you nervous about a real estate crash? Or what about all of the people who failed in 2008 or lost everything in 2008? That I sit back and I go, first, does the person I'm talking to have the capacity to understand if I explain myself? Because it's not always somebody who's watching this kind of content on YouTube. Sometimes it's people who have no idea what investing in real estate is like. Second, do I have the time to explain it? Because when we talk about what happened in 2008, there are so many elements that existed then that just don't exist now. We don't currently have adjustable rate mortgages. In 2006 and 7, there were over 50% of loans were adjustable rate mortgages. Right now, we're under 4%. We had ninja loans, no income, no job, no asset loans then that we just don't have now. Now lending is actually much more strict, and I've been through several refinances and purchases in the last couple of years. It's very hard to get a lender to agree to loan the money because of all of the documents that you need to prove, all of the documents to provide. It's not like it was in 2006 or 7. We also have appreciation to where people have equity. So in 2007 and 8, when we had all the adjustable rate mortgages hitting where people had to either refinance or sell their property, they couldn't because they owed more than the property was worth because they were borrowing 105%. Now people are only borrowing 70, 75, 80%, depending on the type of loan they're using. We're not wrapping up the closing costs into the loans to where we're underwater from day one with the property. So I'm not worried about prices coming down like most investors and probably most people watching right now. I'm actually kind of hopeful that it does come down. We can buy things on sale. We can take the meet Kevin line from buying in stocks of buy the dip. What an investor for buy and hold investments is most worried about is rents coming down. How much would rents have to drop for us to actually be in danger? So that's the way we protect a rental portfolio. I wouldn't understand this if I was investing in stocks and growing a business and investing in real estate. Where I'm just focused on real estate, I'm able to do things like understand how much leverage I want and how much leverage I don't want so that I can make sure that I've got this gap to where my portfolio is set up to where rents could actually drop 50% before I'd have to pull in any money out of my own accounts to cover mortgages. In my life, and I'm coming, I'm on a half a century of life now, I've never seen a rent drop more than 10%. I've actually, in my markets that I've lived in, I've never seen a rent drop. Even in Washington State in 2009, after the housing crash, rents went up because when there were a lot of foreclosures and people lost their houses, that means those people became renters, which increased demand on an already limited supply. So if I can handle a 50% drop in rents, that's because I don't over leverage my properties. I don't pull out home equity lines of credit. I don't do cash out refinances. I save up down payments. So I'm actually purchasing properties with equity. And then as they have appreciated, so many people treat their houses or their properties like a piggy bank where they keep refinancing, they keep pulling money out because you want to acquire more assets. So yes, if I did that, I could have more properties, but I would have narrower margins and then I wouldn't be able to handle something like a rent reduction. So the ways that I diversify in one asset class is instead of buying a 10-unit apartment complex where all of your tenants are in one spot and they can come from one source, I buy small multifamily. I was going to buy single family, so it would work for that too, but I buy small multifamily, so duplex, triplex, or fourplex, and I keep my properties spread out. I want my properties at least 10 miles apart so that they're pulling tenants from different sources. For the most part, I've been able to do that. 2 properties are about 7 miles apart, so I kind of broke my rule, but the deal was right. Then I diversify my tenant base. I want to diversify to where I'm pulling tenants of different types. I want my balance that I try to maintain is 1/3 military, 1/3 Section 8, 1/3 working, or retired. And it would be illegal. Every time I say this, somebody will jump into the comments and say, if you advertised military only or Section 8 only, you'd be probably setting yourself up for a lawsuit, which is probably true. So I don't advertise specifically to a type of tenant. What I do is I control where I advertise. If I have a unit that's becoming available and I want to put a military tenant in there, which I probably do in a couple of months, I have a tenant who's buying a house, which is really cool. I'm glad for him. But I would advertise on base if I wanted a military tenant. And then who do you think I'm going to get to apply? If I want a Section 8 tenant, I call the housing authority and I say to the counselors, here's the link to my property that's becoming available next Tuesday. Can you share this with your clients? And then who do you think I'm going to get? So I keep my property spread out. I diversify the tenant base, and then I keep good reserves. So I'm focused on one asset class. I was able to learn the strategies to invest in just 10 years to go from a really bad position where I had a lot of bad debt, was a single parent with 3 kids, and wasn't making a lot of money, to within 10 years make work completely optional. To the point where right now, and why it looks so weird behind me, and it normally looks a little better when I use the right camera, but YouTube doesn't like me today. I told my employers, I'm going to Florida for a month or 2. I'm going to scuba dive until I get bored, which is why the red face. And then I'm going to come back. Since they know that work is optional, they just said, okay, have fun. Maybe if you get a chance, take a laptop with you, do some work. And if you haven't seen the video that came out on Michael Zuber's channel, One Rental at a Time, or I don't think it's been released on Millennial Mike's yet, but we also did the video on how I got evicted. Let me know in the comments if you want to know how I got evicted, if you haven't seen it yet, from a Verbo. I was there less than 24 hours and got kicked out. Life is entertaining, if nothing else. So sometimes when I talk to a new investor, they say things like, I want to be diversified. I want a retirement account, which if you've been watching my content, you know that I hate retirement accounts. Retirement accounts are great if you invest in nothing else. If you have no cash flowing assets and your goal is to rely on a job, it's one source of income, probably the most risky thing we can do as a human for our families, and then retire after 59 and a half. At that point, retirement accounts make sense. If you have any investing strategy at all, retirement accounts are usually the worst use of your money. And then they say things like, well, I diversify my retirement account. I go into 40% risky, 40% not risky, and 10% or 20%, whatever the math is on what's left, into bonds. And they think they're diversifying that. But they're spreading their money out into a retirement account. That's the first step that I don't like. And then if they invest in stocks or real estate or both, if they don't focus, if they don't take the time to learn the strategy that's the most effective, and there are some stock investors who watch my content, and I totally understand that if you've taken the time to learn how to invest in stocks, it's the way to go. I took the time to learn real estate. And what I would like to do is have a stock investor explain to me how I could do this, because this is how it worked for real estate. I invested for 10 years. I've house hacked twice. So by investing in real estate, I've reduced or eliminated, actually currently eliminated and getting paid $2,500 a month to live in the unit that I live in with real estate. Haven't been able to figure that out with stocks yet. But I invested out of my own pocket over 10 years about $320,000. There was about another $300,000 that was reinvested cash flow from the rentals, but 320 from me invested. The cash flow for 2021, as I just finished doing taxes, was it was 128,000 a month. I was on track to do 136,000, but it's looking significantly more now because the binder strategy has been more effective this year than I was expecting. So I've invested 320. Cash flow was 128. That's over a 30% cash on cash return, not counting appreciation, principal pay down, and the fact that not only did I not pay taxes on the $128,000, but because of depreciation and write-offs, I'm carrying forward an $8,900 loss to next year in case I have profits. So that's why I chose one asset class to focus on it. I need somebody someday, but not today, to sit down with me who's a stock investor who could show me that, is it possible to invest $320,000 and generate a six-figure passive income that is also appreciating and getting principal pay down? There's got to be some version of that, because there are reasons why people choose stocks. And I don't know if it's that they think stocks are better, or do they just hate the idea of being a landlord? You watching this right now need to pick your asset class, focus on it, learn the skills and tactics to use that to reach financial freedom. Once you do, then you can diversify. That's how you protect your wealth. I'm still not even at the point. With 6 figures of passive income, net worth hitting almost 3 million, I'm not at the point to start picking other asset classes yet. Soon, probably within the next couple of years, I will start looking at how to take 1 to 5% into crypto, 1 to 5% into stocks, something to spread it around a little. But it's really hard to convince myself to do that when I've learned how to be so successful in the asset class that I chose, and to be as diversified as I am in that one asset class. So I'm going to go through, hopefully we get some good questions coming in tonight. I will apologize for the bad video quality. I was actually thinking of doing this while walking around outside, but it's a canal out there and I'd probably fall in the water. And I don't know how the lighting would work. So probably not going to do that. Howdy, Chris, Phil, Chester, Greg. Larry and Tiffany, howdy. Thanks for letting me know the sound is working. This is a new computer, which is technically turning out to be a $3,000 paperweight, because last year the camera wouldn't work at all. And this week, it's using the wrong camera and won't switch over, which I don't understand. Chester, could you speak a little bit on the various kinds of systems you have? So far, I've ID'd acquisition, make ready, marketing, rental operation, lease renegotiation, and disposal, both tenant and asset. Good evening. Yes. So the systems, I think it confuses people when I talk about how simple investing in real estate can be. The way the business structure looks is with 16 rental units, one checking account, one savings account, one credit card, one Excel spreadsheet, one tab for income, one tab for expenses. And that's basically the entire business. I do use apartments.com to list a rental when I have it, but I don't collect rents there or anything. I just use it to get eyes on the property. I use the Thumbtack app to find contractors, get quotes, and read reviews. I use 2 handymen, and I make sure that, that way one's available in case the other isn't. And even if there's something small that I could do myself, I make sure to give the work to the handyman, because giving them the easy job makes it easier to have them come and do something at 10 o'clock at night when there's an emergency. You've seen the binder method, I'm pretty sure, if you talked about, lease renegotiation. I'm trying to think of, I guess, the main systems that really matter as an investor during the growth phase is how do you interact with agents? How do you interact with lenders? I'm making a video in a couple days called The Order of Operations for Lending. It'll be a live stream so that everybody can see that it's actually in my head and not something I have to look up every time I go to do it. The systems I have for finding properties, a lot of people talk about becoming a real estate agent so they can have access to the MLS. And in my opinion, searching on the MLS is kind of nuanced. Even if I was an agent, I would still do what I do to find deals. I have at least 3 agents. Sometimes I've had 4 or 5, and the agents have changed throughout the last 10 years, but at least 3 with auto searches set up. I have a copy and paste email of, this is the footprint I want to search in, this is the type of properties, this is the price range I'm in. I don't want HOAs, I don't want short sales, I don't want foreclosures. I spell out all the details, copy and paste, send it to the agents, and in 10 years, one time within a 24-hour period has my agents ever sent me the same deal. They search completely different. If a property sits on the MLS for over a week, they all usually send it to me. So whoever sent it first would be the one that would get the work if that's the one I ended up getting. So that's the system for finding properties. I don't do mailers. I don't do driving for dollars. I don't do any of the creative ways of finding properties. I had a gentleman on about a week ago where he talked about joining social media groups. And a lot of people talk about getting into real estate groups and talking about their deals, but he had a creative way of going into garage sale groups on Facebook, because that is people who are changing locations, upsizing, downsizing, moving, something where they're doing something with properties, getting known in those groups, and then talking about real estate and finding leads that way. I don't do any of that. Mine is very simple. I just have 3 auto searches set up with at least 3 agents where I find properties that way. The system for making an offer is run the numbers. Math is first. I know my footprint, and that's one of the reasons why diversification can be bad. If you're in one asset class like real estate and you're looking in 5 different markets, I don't think I have the bandwidth to run the numbers on that many markets and know the good areas, bad areas, what's happening in those areas, whether population is growing, businesses are moving there or moving away. So I focus on just 2 counties. I'm looking at a 3rd county in another state, but I think the weather scared me away and I'm going to stay in Washington. It gets cold in Idaho, really cold. No thanks. So I know my footprint. I know the areas to avoid. So when I see properties pop up that are in those areas, I know to instantly disregard them, no matter what the price is. If somebody were to give me a property on McKinley Avenue in Tacoma, I would immediately sell it. I don't care if the price was free or $5, there would be no reason for me to ever keep a property in an area of town that I can't safely go to. And I'm armed everywhere I go. So if the cops can't go there by themselves, I'm not buying a property there. So I know that in my footprint. The first thing I'm doing when I'm running in my search, since I'm already in my footprint, because it's the only areas that I'm searching, is to run math. I know the area average rents, and I have a system for that. So that would be another system. There's a video, how to set rents, on my channel, which basically all I'm really doing is looking on Craigslist, apartments.com, Facebook Marketplace, almost daily, at least twice a week, to watch what's happening with rents. Similar size units to the ones I'm purchasing. What is going on with those actual rents? That tells me where the rents are going to be. I'm watching rates, especially now where rates are changing, because the Fed talks about doing something with rates and then banks change the rate. The Fed doesn't even have to make their change. They just have to talk about it. Most people don't understand that banks lend on margin. If an interest rate for a loan is 3% or an interest rate for a loan is 15%, that doesn't mean that a bank is making 15% or 3%. It's been decades, since the 80s, since we saw interest rates in the 15s or higher. The Fed rate was at 0, 1, 2, and banks lend at 3, 4, and 5. They have a gap that they're going to make their profit on, and it's competitive. Whatever they have to borrow money at from the Fed or bank to bank, they lend out at a percentage higher than that. So when you see a 3% loan, that means the Fed rate is probably 1 or 1.5. When you see a 15% interest rate loan from a bank, that means the Fed rate is probably 11 or 12. You're seeing a little bit more margin the higher it gets, but not a lot. So check rates daily. Every time you make an offer, figure out what the rates are at, because that'll tell you whether you can make that offer or not. And what we're seeing right now with what Michael Zuber has coined as the, inventory destruction or supply destruction, people are unable to sell properties because they're unable to buy the one they would move to. People are losing their pre-qualifications as rates change. So I'm watching rents, I'm watching rates, and I'm watching prices. And then the system for watching prices isn't when a property hits the MLS, what is it at? That doesn't tell you everything. How long does a property sit on the MLS is what tells me if that price wasn't overshot. Because if it goes pending really quick, you know that they were right on, or that somebody saw the value in it and made the right offer. But I've looked at properties that have been on the MLS now coming on 2-3 weeks. Sellers weren't expecting rates to go up as fast as they did. So they were projecting growth, and it made sense to sell properties at a certain level. So they listed them. Well, it doesn't make sense to buy them at that level when rates went up as fast as they did. So that's the system for running math. There's the things you have to watch: rates, rents, and prices. And you have to keep it current. If you're making an offer from 5-day or 10-day old data, you could be setting yourself up to lose earnest money. Make sure you're current on that before you're making offers. That's why Michael Zuber talks about all the time, do the work daily. Every day, 15, 20 minutes, do the work. I see that we've had a few more people log in. I will apologize again. My camera is on the wrong camera. So if the video's bad, I'm sorry. Hopefully the sound is working good enough. So I'm going to go through the questions here. I was just finishing Chester's there. Jimena, hola mija, ¿cómo está? Buenas tardes. Martin, howdy. Justin, howdy. Tony, howdy. Chester, I'm the only one who didn't open with howdy. No worries. And then my chat moved. So thank you. And then Andrew, howdy. Howdy, Dion. We got pre-approved for the fourplex, and we put in our offer, just waiting to hear back from the seller. Cool. Good. So watch the rates. So that pre-approval, you make sure that it stays current. I don't know if you've locked your rate yet, but that's something you're going to want to talk to your lender on to see if that's something you want to do now or not. Chester, could you explain how EMDs work and when out of good faith to buy when it doesn't make sense to use them? As a follow-up, how much would a reasonable EMD be, and when should we not use one? I'm not acronym happy or savvy. I think you're talking about earnest money deposit. Is that what EMD means? I'm going to guess that's earnest money. I'll let you answer real quick and I'll make sure that's what you're talking about before I spend 5 minutes talking about something and have the wrong acronym. I think that's what EMD means. I'll still wait till you say, Chester. Pallavi, howdy. Karen. Okay, you want to hear about the VRBO? Good. Have to hear about the VR story. Nice. Okay. Howdy, Dawn. And I will explain the binder strategy after I talk about this. So EMD, earnest money deposit. Okay, so let me cover that before I cover the VRBO, which technically I guess we're supposed to say Verbo. I was on the phone with their customer service help people and they corrected me like 3 times because it's a branding issue that they have. They don't like VRBO for some reason. They like Verbo. So earnest money, you're pretty much going to make an earnest money amount with each offer. I use it every time. There has never been a time I've made an offer on a property without offering earnest money. I also never waive inspection or appraisals. I've heard so many people say, my agent said everybody's waiving inspections and appraisals. Well, I use a professional term, no screaming eagle dookie. Your agent's job is to close deals. The more attractive the deal is to the seller and the less barriers there are between offer and closing, the agent's doing their job. I don't know anybody who's actually getting properties and waiving inspections and waiving appraisals. I just hear a bunch of agents saying that's what everyone's doing. None of the people I've worked with that have closed on deals in the last 6 months, that I've helped people close on deals, and myself from last year included, waived anything. So I would not do that ever. I have some friends who are extremely well off, probably multiples, probably 10 times my net worth at least. Yeah. I wouldn't even suggest that they waive things. They have the bandwidth to make an appraisal gap coverage. They have the bandwidth to lose the earnest money if they had to. There is no reason. Keep making offers on deals that make sense. I've used larger earnest monies to get a seller's attention. Some people will talk about 1 or 2%. So if you're looking at a $500,000 duplex, you want to offer a $5,000 earnest. I usually double it to $10,000. And depending on how much you have, you can make it as large as their attention. Because remember, sellers aren't always investors. As an investor, we think, I'm going to have an agent. I'm going to list my property on several different platforms, including the MLS. I'm going to take several days to look at different offers to figure out the best one with the best price and most likely to close or whatever matters to me as a seller. And then I'm going to choose that one. Most sellers can't believe they're going to get the amount that they're seeing on Zillow or Redfin or that their agent is telling them the comps are because they either inherited the property or they bought it 30 years ago for 1/10 of the price. So when they see those offers come in, earnest money to a seller often looks like free money. It's defined as money you get to keep if the buyer backs out. Well, that's true. Except we have an inspection clause, which doesn't mean I get to pay for an inspection. And if the inspection report is bad enough, I'm going to back out. It means that for the number of days of the inspection period, I get to change my mind for any reason whatsoever. And I don't even have to explain it to you. I could just back out and keep my earnest money. So I always have that because I have never gone and looked at a property and then made an offer. And never, not even 10 years ago when there was more time on the market. Make an offer that makes sense because it's in the area that you want. It's the type of property you're looking for. It meets all your metrics. Once you're under contract, then I would go look. I make at least 20 offers before I get one accepted because I'm making offers that make sense to me. It's not always going to make sense to the seller. If I went and looked at 20 properties, even if that just took 20 minutes, that's an incredible amount of time commitment. And I'm an investor, not an entrepreneur. I can Google Earth it, look at Street View. I don't have to go see the property. The time to go look at a property is once you're under contract. So if I make 20 offers or more and then finally get one under contract, yes, I'll then take the time to go look at the property. I've been out of country before, so I didn't take the time to go look at that one. But that's when I'll go look. You also have an appraisal clause, which means if it doesn't appraise high enough, which is a very weird time, you're purchasing something, you're going to pay a professional who's educated, and this is their job, and then you're going to hope that they say the thing you're looking at buying is expensive enough for you to buy. So if it's not, if it doesn't appraise high enough, you get to back out and not lose your earnest money. So I use one every time. I'll use a larger one. Some people will talk about waiving inspections or waiving appraisals. If that's the case, then I'm going to use a really small earnest money, because that's money you can lose if you don't have those contingencies in place. And then I think we were at the Verbo. Okay. So I was evicted in less than 24 hours, and an investor lost $4,800 because he didn't want to pay a $40 fee. Like I said earlier, if you weren't here, I told my employers, the people who own the rest of the trucking school that I work at, commercial driver school, that I want to do some scuba. It's kind of the cool thing about being financially free. I'm going to go to Florida. I'm going to be there for at least a month or two. And then I just left. They did ask me to take a laptop. And so I have a new laptop, which is not working. I shouldn't have brought it. It's a $3,000 paperweight. So I come down here, I book a Verbo for 38 days because I wasn't sure if I was going to do 1 or 2 months. And then I figured I would just book another place if I didn't like the one I was in. I show up, and it's nice inside. Like, they did a really good job with the furniture. It was really high end, but it's a unit in a 20-unit complex. So there's an HOA. So it was like an apartment complex that got broken into condos, and then they Verboed their condo. Their HOA has a rule that the owner has to do a background check on anybody who's coming. So I've been in the military, I've worked in law enforcement, I have a clean background because I've never been caught. So they could do the background check and nothing's going to pop up. But he didn't. He didn't pay the $40 fee to the HOA to run the background check. And when they came, and it literally, Millennial Mike said this perfectly. He said, because it was these 4 nice older ladies, it was like the Golden Girls came and kicked me out of the place. They basically came, knocked on the door, and escorted me off the premises because he didn't pay a $40 background check. I offered to pay the $40 and just said, like, we could do the background check here, I'll pay for it. And they said, no, the owner has to pay for it, because they were trying to teach the owner a lesson. So I had paid $4,800 for a Verbo to be here for the 38 days. And I got evicted because he didn't pay $40 for a background check. So I call Verbo and I say, I just got kicked out. I've been evicted. That was first. Haven't been evicted before. And they were totally apologetic. So if I ever make the video that's just like a standalone video on my eviction experience, it will be a Verbo sales pitch, because they were very gracious. They were like, we totally understand. This was not your fault. We get it. They put me in a hotel and they said, we'll find you a place. So they found me another place. I'm staying in another place here, which is a house. This would have been twice as much, would have been like $10,000 for this place for the same time. They're eating that cost. So they took the $4,800 from the first person and they're using it on this next place. So an investor lost $5,000. I get to stay in a place that would have cost $5,000 more over a $40 fee. Yeah, it was pretty weird. And then the guy goes, well, if you just, now that Verbo's out of the picture, you could just pay me and rent the place. And then since he doesn't have to pay Verbo a fee, he can use that money to pay for this security check. I don't think this guy's business is going to last very long. And then Carrie, howdy, you asked about the binder strategy. It's actually, I think, one of the things I'm most well known for. It got me invited on BiggerPockets. They had episode 448 of their real estate podcast was mine. One of the main reasons they got me on there was the binder strategy. And it's my strategy that gets tenants to request a rent increase. So I'll give you the quick 2.5-minute version. Most tenants don't know what current area rents are because they've been in a place for a long time. And I like to buy properties that are already occupied. My goal is to buy a property that already has tenants in place because I don't want to do a rehab. I don't want to have to advertise a property. I don't have to screen tenants and place the tenants. I want to already there. I want to collect rents during that gap month when I purchase a property and there's a whole month that goes by where you don't make a mortgage payment. So you have a full 30 days past closing and I'm collecting rents already. So what I do, and we call it the binder, because I actually take a 3-ring binder. This will work through email. I use email when I do it with the Section 8 program because I don't want to go into their office, but it works on the housing authority too. The binder, the first page is a picture of the property off of Redfin, Zillow, or something that the tenant's going to be able to find anyways, with a purchase price and the current Zestimate or Redfin estimate of what the value is, so that I can show the tenant what the taxes and insurance are based off of the first of that value, because the previous owner probably bought it 10 or 15 years ago when it was 200,000 and I just paid 525. So there's a big new number for taxes and insurance. The next page in that binder is a map of all the rentals in the area with the pinpoints of where they're at. And you can get that off of apartments.com, Zillow, Trulia. And then each page after that is those rentals. Same number of bedrooms, so if it's a two bedroom, 1 bath, I look up 2 bedroom, 1 bath. So if it's a 3-2, I do this, they match. When I acquire a property, tenants are usually far below the area average rent, hundreds of dollars, $400 or $500 lower. The best thing to do as an investor is to buy an empty property, do a rehab, list it at area average rent. So you're going to spend another $10,000 or $20,000 to get it ready, but then you're going to get the highest rents. I'm super lazy and I don't want to displace a tenant. So what I do is I show them, this is what the current rents are. If you were to have to move, this is what you would pay. I don't want you to have to move. And I just ask the tenants, now that you've seen what the other rentals are around here and how good a deal you've been getting, what do you think is fair? And I literally ask them that. And I tell them, look, I'm not going to do a rehab. I'm going to fix things. I put in coded locks, motion sensor LED lights. I ask the tenant if there's anything they want fixed. So I always wait about 2 months to do this strategy because I want the tenants to know I'm going to fix the place up. So while I don't do a full rehab, if there's anything that doesn't work, like a garage door or a fan or something, I'll fix those things so they know I'm going to take care of the place. So far, 100% of the time, every single tenant, not one of them has done what people say sarcastically, where they go, well, it's fair if my rent stays the same or if it goes down. Nobody's said that, because the tenants know the best option would be to kick them out and renew the rents at the area average. You do have to wait until the current lease expires. So if it's month to month, you can do it kind of right away. I would still wait 2 months, but if it's a 5 months remaining on their lease, you have to wait till their lease is over. Most tenants have asked for the rent to go up. They've actually said the words, can we have the rent go up $325 or $310? Because that's still below the area average. Remember, they're $400 or $500 below the area average. They ask for it to go up over $300. And then I agree. I don't have to do a rehab, so I don't have to spend a bunch of money, but I'm not getting the rents I could get. They're getting an increase, but they're still getting a deal. They're still lower than area average rents. And now they have an owner that's actually going to take care of the place. So it's called the binder strategy. And the reason I'm trying to share it is it helps owners get an amount that actually makes it worth investing. And it helps tenants, because how many tenants have ever been involved in the conversation to set their rents? And they know what their budget is. So there have been times when they've offered, I want $150 or $200 increase, and they ask for a $250. When the tenant in the next unit asks for a $350. So their budget dictated where they could go. As long as I hit the number that I need so that I'm not losing money, I've agreed to it. So that's the Cliff Notes version of the binder strategy. Business Insider recently did an article. They've done 4. How to reach financial freedom the way I did. So they did an article on that. And then they did an article on the binder strategy and the income snowball. And then they did one on this, the title of this video on how to focus on one asset instead and then diversify later. The article on the binder strategy hit Reddit, and holy cow, there were thousands of people in there very upset that they hate landlords. They hate anybody who collects rent. They hate that you could raise the rent on a tenant. Very entertaining. Still, the tenant's getting a good deal. The tenant didn't get evicted. They're still below area average rents, and I'm fixing the place up. And I met the legal timelines and enough notice to let them do this. But some people hate landlords. I get it. Me and Millennial Mike did a video on that, and me and Lumberjack Landlord did a video on that. That'll be coming out soon too. So hopefully that explains the binder strategy. Okay, it sounds like dividend investing is your only option for stocks. Kind of. The 4% rule is the other one I've heard, where if you invest enough to where if you take out 4%, you can live on it if that covers your living expenses. My problem is that seems like it would take so much investing to get, $128,000 in cash flow, 126. That's multiples. You would need 3 or 4 million invested instead of 320,000. So, and then my chat moved. Sorry. Sorry. I lost where I was in that chat. Okay, here we go. If I would be better with people, I would do real estate instead of retirement accounts. I'm not actually a people person. I'm a introvert. I would rather read a book than go to a party. It seems odd to do videos, but I mean, think about it. I'm the only person in the room right now. This is perfect. You can hire a property manager, Jimena, so you don't have to manage the people. You can distance yourself one step, like Michael Zuber does. So there is other options. Johnny Cashflow, howdy. What's up, real estate freaks? Howdy. Martin, howdy. Have you ever taken over a property and had tenants on housing for low income? I almost said yes. Not low income housing. I have acquired Section 8. There's a huge difference between Section 8 and low income. Low income properties attract low income tenants. Section 8 properties attract fixed income tenants. I have tenants in Section 8 that have 830 credit scores that have never had issues. So I have acquired properties that had Section 8 tenants in it. It's a pretty easy transition. That property had already been inspected by the previous, while it was owned by the previous owner. So it was really just getting the new contract with the housing association, housing authority, with me as the owner to collect the rents. I like to keep about 1/3 of my units listed with the Section 8 program, 1/3 military, 1/3 working and retired. So it helps me be diversified. There was a time about a year and a half ago where Section 8 really started falling behind on rents. They were offering 1,600 in an area where you can get 2,200. So I had a couple that I didn't go with housing authority when I purchased. The binder method has worked. They told me this one time that they would go up to 1,800, but that was the limit. I showed them comps in the area at 24 and 25, and they went to 2,200. So I actually sent them emails of, here's the comparable rental units in the area. And the Section 8 program only cares about bedrooms. They don't care if you have garages, pools, sheds, none of that matters. How many bedrooms are there? That's what they base their rents on. I showed them the comps so that the counselor could go to their boss and say, this is the comps, this is the rent. So they went, their absolute cap was 1,800. They went to 2,200. So I still have a Section 8 tenant in that property. Melinda, howdy, from Colorado. I went to Colorado for the Renaissance Fair last year. Tony, what is the appropriate population for your buy box areas? No alligators in real estate or driving to Florida. Yeah, there's alligators here. I didn't see any this trip yet, but I'm up in Cape Coral. So if I went down the last time I was here, I went down to the Keys, alligators everywhere. The right population is one metric out of the buy box options. So I want side-by-side rentals. Like I don't want small multifamily where there's tenants living above or below another, because you get noise complaints. Plumbing issue affects 2 tenants instead of 1, right? But I've made offers on over/under properties because the yield was good enough, the area was good enough, it had everything else I was looking for. So each one of these criteria that I want is the buy box of everything I want. So I want side-by-side units. I want washer dryer hookups inside each unit because tenants looking for, using a laundromat or shared laundry or waiting for someplace else to open. I want 2 bedrooms and a garage or more because more space means more stuff, so less likely to move. I want pet friendly when possible. I want a fence because I allow pets. People with pets don't like to relocate pets because even if the human moves with that animal, it's a relocation. And so I keep tenant turnover really low by having those criteria. And then I want the area to have several economic drivers. So a minimum of 2, if not 3 or 4, things like a base, a port, a college, a hospital, Boeing or Amazon, or a population of at least 100,000. So it's in that list. base, port, college, hospital, Boeing, Amazon, large company, or a population of 100,000. If there was a town with a really small population, like McKenna, Washington, I don't even know that they're large enough to have a population sign in that town. I own a duplex there. Super tiny, tiny. It doesn't even, there can't be 2,000 people living in that city. I probably should Google that. It seems that small because you drive through, don't blink, right? But it's situated by a base in an area where it's the duplex that's side by side, has garages in the middle, totally separate, 2-bedroom, 2-bath each side. It hits all of these metrics across the board, washer, dryer, inside the units. That the small population was okay because it had enough of everything else. So I want a population of 100,000 or more if other things are missing. Hope that made sense. At the very beginning of the video, I talked about, one of the things I was mentioning was picking a market, knowing whether population was growing or shrinking. That's different than how much the population there is. If a population is shrinking, why? Did a bunch of manufacturing companies move away, or was there a BRAC meeting and the base closed, or is the port closed, or something that made that not a good place to invest? Going up or down is different than the actual number. Adam, howdy. Mary, howdy. And Paula, howdy. Justin, howdy. Why do you feel like you need to get to 5 million net worth first? You've said to make rental income many times what you need to live, so why not now? Thanks for any insight. Because I've mastered, I honestly feel, 10,000 hours, I have mastered buy and hold small multifamily real estate, which could be house hacked, to the point that I have confidence that today I had this weird random thought. What if I bought a truck, like an F-350, and an RV, a fifth wheel RV? So, because I've got several friends, that's what they've got. Truck and RV, they go every weekend, they go somewhere. I don't, because I've been working 60 hours a week and I can't see spending weekends packing, going, unpacking, whatever. But at some point in the future, I might not decide to do 2 months in Florida. I might just not have a job, right? So I had that crazy thought, which probably will never happen. But what if I bought a truck and a camper? It took me 3 seconds, maybe 5 seconds, to realize, well, that's not what I would do. I would figure out what the payment for a truck and an RV, fifth wheel, would be. And then I would take the money that I have that I could buy those with, and I would buy a duplex or triplex or fourplex or whatever the down payment would get me. That would cash flow the amount of the payment, insurance, registration, and upkeep of a truck and a fifth wheel. I would then buy the truck and RV on payments. And 5 years, whatever the payments are for something like that, which I haven't done any research on yet. At the end of that, I still have the cash flow from the asset. I have all of the appreciation from the asset. I have the, I just realized this whole time I've been looking at the wrong camera because it's the wrong camera. Weird, sorry. That's frustrating. Totally squirreled. But that's what I would do. So I've got the ability to increase cash flow with consistency, with confidence, to where diversifying right now doesn't make any sense, especially while I only have, so I have 7 properties, 16 units. I only have 6 mortgages. I can get 4 more in my name as long as I have a W-2. So I'm in that time window to save down payments and get mortgages that make the most sense now because of the W-2, because I can have up to 10 in my own name. So there's good reason why I'm waiting until net worth gets much larger. And even then, even when it hits 5, I will probably not diversify. It's just that's when it would make sense to do it. Good question. Thanks, Justin. Chester, yep. Earnest money. Okay. J. Markey. Howdy. Howdy, Dion. If you acquire a property where the tenants are already on month-to-month leases, do you have them on a month-to-month or ask them to sign a new 12-month lease with you? Thanks. That's a great question. And that's why I like to do the lives, because this is something that I think is a concept that just seems like second nature to me because I have a way of doing this and I wouldn't know to make a video on this. So when I acquire tenants, most of them are on month to month. There's only been a couple of times where one person tried to protect their tenants, signed a new year lease while we were under contract. Um, and some other ones have had, 4 or 5 months, but most, I'd say 90% of the tenants that I've acquired or inherited, or however you want to say it, were on month to month leases. For lenders to recognize rental income, most lenders need one thing, some need two. The first thing that they need is rental income on your tax returns for 2 years. Once you have rental income on your tax returns for 2 years, lenders will look at rental income in your debt to income ratio, making it easier to scale. If you're trying to scale quickly, and lenders will actually say there is no limit to how much you can borrow, it's all based on your down payment. So you're going to put 20 or 25% down. However much down you save, you'll need reserves and money for closing costs. So how much money you save is how much you can invest. But to get to that point, the lenders usually want at least 3 months remaining on leases. Month to month leases don't show 3 months. So when I purchase a property, it usually depletes my funds while I save up for another 6 months or a year to buy the next property. I'm not in a real big hurry to get those leases in place. I want to wait 2 months. I want 2 months because I didn't get to screen or vet these tenants. So for those 2 months, I'm going in and fixing. I don't do this. I'm lazy. I have a handyman that goes in, puts in coated locks, puts in motion sensor LED exterior lights, does all of those things. And make sure I'm seeing the right camera here. Sorry. So for those 2 months, I make sure they pay their rent on time. I don't get noise complaints, and they're not calling me for super trivial things, right? So like that's my screening period. I don't run a background check. I don't do a credit check. I just make sure this is tenants I want to keep. So at about the 2 month point, I then go do the binder strategy, set the rents where I want them. One of the other benefits to the binder is we're doing an increase to the tenant's rent. I mean, they asked for it, but we're agreeing to it. I just casually mention, if you really want to protect yourself from a rent increase next year, we could probably sign a 2-year lease. And most times, every time except for one, the tenants have turned around and said, well, can we just sign a 2-year lease? I usually do 5% increase every other year after I've done the binder. Right, all the time except for 2021, rents went up so fast. I did the binder strategy with everybody again, but I don't want a rent increase the next year. That rent increase from the binder strategy gets me to the return that I need, and they can stay there. So that's the way that I get the longer lease in place. And then once you have that 1 year or 2 year lease in place, and check your local laws, like in Washington State, anytime a lease is longer than 12 months, the tenant's signature has to be notarized. So know your local laws. Then I can take those leases and submit it to the lender with my, pay stub documents, taxes, blood sample, whatever else the lender wants to borrow the money. I can show them the leases saying I have at least 3 months remaining. And it was really weird in the beginning when I asked a lender, you're letting me make a 30-year commitment for hundreds of thousands of dollars because a tenant has made a 3-month commitment for a couple $1,000s? And the lender explained, yep, because we're not going to keep your loan. We're going to get paid for processing the loan, and then we're going to sell it within a few days. But we might hold it for a month or two. We want to make sure that your tenants are in place to cover the payments while we own the loan. So that made sense to me. Andrew, yep, you locked 7.25 on a DSCR loan. Cool. So asset-based 7.25. It sounds like a really high number. That's as high as I've seen in the last probably 5 years. But our rates were above that not too long ago, especially if you weren't using owner-occupied bank loans. But DSCR, the cool thing with that is if you get 2 years of history and you stabilize, and then you can refinance into 30-year fixed with a different loan product in a couple of years, you really have an impact on the cash flow for that property. Patty, howdy. Your tenant lease will be due in 2 months. I'm going to increase the rent. How can I approach this increase with the tenant? Hopefully you were watching when I just talked about the binder strategy. If not, on this channel, there is a video. There's a couple, the binder strategy, how to get a tenant to request the rent increase. There's a 20-minute video that really breaks down the nuances of doing the binder strategy. It's a way to not only get your rent increase, but your tenant will be happy at the end of the meeting. And happy tenants don't trash the place, and they don't leave. This is how small the tenant turnover is using something like the binder strategy. I've been investing for 10 years. I have 16 rental units. And I usually say the data just in case somebody logs into a video in the middle or later. I know that if you've been here since the beginning of a video, I've probably said that 2 or 3 times now. I've had 2 tenant turnovers. So the first year I had a really bad experience with tenants. Once I got my systems in place, so for 10 years now, I've had a total of 2 tenant turnovers. One went to a hospital and passed away. And the other, she inherited a house. So I totally understand why they moved. Happy tenants don't leave. So the binder strategy, or how to get a tenant to request a rent increase on this channel, or in this live stream, probably 12 minutes ago. Let me see, your tenants ends in 2 months. I would probably do the binder strategy soon. So I would research that video to like tonight or tomorrow, do the binder strategy soon, because you need to know your local rules. In Washington State, we only have to give 20 days notice if we're not renewing a lease. So a tenant can say, hey, I'm moving out. Or we could say, we're not renewing your lease in 20 days. But to do a rent increase of over 10%, you have to give 60 days notice. So at the end of giving the binder strategy, I usually tell the tenants, all right, so we've got a new rental agreement. You are setting your new rent at this amount. We have decided that. We'll sign the thing. Next month, and the next month, and the next month, all stay the same. So 3 months, we're not going to change your rent. At the 90-day point, the next month is going to have the new amount. It does 2 things. The first one is that you're legal. You are giving the required amount of time. Second, it shows the tenant that you're not just there to get money. You're there to make an agreement, get the lease in place, and do a rent increase that makes sense. But it's not right away. They don't have to immediately adjust their budget for 25 days from now when the next month hits. Mary Jane, howdy. Do you purchase off-market deals? Many of these deals require non-refundable earnest monies, and they typically don't like contingencies. How do you protect yourself from losing that money? First question, I have never done an off-market deal. All of my purchases have been right from the MLS, traditional lending, using agents, using banks. We don't have to be creative. The deals are out there to find them on the MLS. When you find an off-market deal, you're usually getting ripped off. Everybody talks about, I want an off-market deal because it's going to be better, right? There's some secret sauce to getting it off-market. So I start a YouTube channel, and I think in the middle of this video, I am going to pass the Dion Talk 9,000 subscriber mark. I think. Am I? Depends on if anybody hits subscribe right now. Yes, so I just hit 9,000 subscribers tonight, live. So thank you everybody who's hit subscribe. That is a ton of people that I'm hopefully impacting and helping you get into rentals or improve the renting business that you have. I get reached out to all the time by off-market deals, and I'm still buying on the MLS because 100% of the off-market deals that have come my way by people going, hey, you're an investor, I've got this great off-market deal. That deal is off-market because they are freaking embarrassed of the price or the requirements that the seller has, so much so that they're too embarrassed to put it on MLS. It's not that it's a better deal. It's that they know no regular investor is going to put up with this crap or pay that price for it. So if you find an off-market deal because you meet somebody who's a motivated seller, inheritance, death in the family, divorce, something changing to where they have to sell, and then you work out a seller deal off-market, sure. But if someone's bringing you an off-market deal, look at all of the data. Why is it not on the MLS? Because the best way to get the best price is to get the most eyes on a deal. If somebody is saying there's a reason why this is off market and I'm going to help you buy it, they could be a wholesaler, which is great if a wholesaler ever brought me a deal that made sense, which they've never done. And a lot of people, and I said this at the very beginning of this, a lot of people have agents who say, people don't want contingencies. You can't have an appraisal clause and you can't have that's an agent's job to get you to lose those so they can close deals, because their job is to close deals. They're not your mentor. Your lender is not your mentor, and your agent is not your mentor. Your lender's job is to sell loan products. Your agent's job is to close deals. Your mentor's job is to help you learn the strategies and tactics to do the right deals. And the right deal is not waiving contingencies. It's making offers that make sense until you get one to stick. And I make a little over 20 offers till I get one that sticks. So I hope that answers your question. And sometimes the answers aren't what people want to hear. There's no secret sauce a way around. I don't put earnest money deposits at risk. I'm not going to ever waive a contingency like inspection or appraisal. Yeah. So I hope that helped. Janet, howdy, how are you? I am almost marvelous. Happy to be here. Always learning from you a lot. Thank you. Phil, evicted for the sketchy hair, probably. Yes, that was probably it. Exactly. Jason, howdy. My parents send a letter explaining why they are raising rents and how much higher maintenance. Because also make sure you abide by any of your state's local rent increase. So that's good. That's good advice. If you're raising rents, check area average rents, because your expenses don't set rents. The tenant's income doesn't set rents. What are other rentals in the area going for? If I thought of this, and it would be a great response to somebody saying landlords should never raise rent. So I use the binder strategy. I literally show the tenants, here's what the area average rents are. Here's what you're paying. I do say, here's what my expenses are. They're going to go up. So that I agree, Jason, that you should send that letter saying, look, property taxes and insurance are going up. My expenses are more. It logically makes sense. Tenants don't care. If tenants cared about our expenses, a property that was paid off would rent for $500, and a property with a mortgage would rent for $500 more than the mortgage. And that's not the way it works. Tenants don't care what our expenses are. I do explain it so it sounds like that's the reason, and they can justify, they can understand that that is a part of this, right? But you're right. Abide by your local state's laws. Let the tenants know. You can send a letter. I prefer the binder method because it educates the tenant. This is what's happening with rents in the area. And here's the argument that makes it make sense for me. If you're renting a property for $1,000 a month, and area average rents go up to $1,500 a month. If the tenant moved out and you spent $5,000 or $10,000 fixing it up, you would list it at $1,500. Makes sense. If you're not fixing everything up and you don't have that expense, it doesn't really make sense to raise it to $1,500. But if you and the tenant agree on $1,350, you get an increase. You're not at area average rents. You don't have the expense. They don't have to move. So everybody kind of wins in that situation. And other people will go, the rent would go up $350. If you're renting a place for $1,000 and rents in the area drop to $500, let's say the factory, the mill closes down and everybody leaves town, and rents in the area drop to $500. Now you're $500 lower instead of $500 higher. Do you think that tenant is going to pay $1,000 in rent? If area average rents dropped $500, your rent would probably have to drop $500. At a minimum, it would have to drop $350 to get you closer to the area average rents, because then they don't have to move. But if rents go down in the area, your rent is going down. If rents go up in the area, the binder strategy gets your rent to go up. Also, not quite as much because you're not doing the rehab or dealing with a tenant flip, but it goes both ways. But that's good advice. Thanks, Jason. Jimena, we have a small starter home and we keep receiving letters from investors trying to buy our house. Is this something happening often now? Everyone gets that. This will be an overshare, and I probably shouldn't say this, but one of the best things is having exes. One who's not very successful, getting letter after letter after letter because they have the same last name, wanting to buy my properties in all of the different addresses, showing how many properties I have. Because if somebody finds out your name and associates it somehow with a property, you're going to get postcards, letters. Some of them will look like a bill. Some of them will look like tax documents. They're creative. There's literally businesses designed around looking like handwriting. So you can handwrite a letter. So it's a machine that's handwriting hundreds of letters to send out. They're called mailers. There are people who teach classes on how to do this. They have skip tracing to find out the owner of a property. They even narrow it down further with, did you buy within a certain time frame? Have you been married or divorced within a certain time frame? Have you had a death in the family within a certain time frame? Do you have property taxes that are due? Is your primary residence on your taxes in another state from where the property is? Like, they've got like this list of criteria that they go through to make sure they're targeting their mailers at the most likely people to need to sell. And it sounds predatory, but if you're that person in a bad situation and you need to sell, you just need the letter to show up that day, and that's the person who solves your problem. So there's nothing wrong with doing mailers. It's just, yes, as a property owner, and especially when you start getting a couple of rentals, so you have more properties, or you ever list on apartments.com, there's databases out there of every property that's ever been listed as a rental where people just start calling or texting saying, we want to buy your property. And they're creative. It's usually something like, and this is like right out of Cody Davis's playbook, who had 30 units by 21 by doing stuff like talking to the owner and just saying, I'm an investor in the area. I want to buy properties just like yours. And you will find people who want to sell. So you're not the person who's looking to sell, but there are people like you that are selling because they get those letters. Chester, real estate investing is a very long journey with checkpoints along the way. Absolutely. It's the long con. I mean, the long game, the long con, whatever you want to do. Mary Jane, yes, because the housing market has been so crazy that investors want to purchase deals off market. Right. So that's the off market that makes sense. You found somebody who's motivated, not somebody coming to you with, I've got a great deal. To me, that usually tells me I'm about to see something that no one will buy for that price. They're looking for a dumb investor, usually. Then my chat moved, sorry. Okay, Chester, if I ever miss your question because the chat moves, please just put it in again, because my goal is to hit every question that comes in. Chester, Dion, would you, Matt, and the Zuber mind doing a longer form interview, maybe 30 minutes or so, with Todd Baldwin and one or two of the rent by room house hacking experts? I would love to. I'll reach out to Todd. That guy is one of the most busy guys I know, but he's super helpful and he wants to share his information. So I'm absolutely, I will absolutely do that. I would counter with Todd has a channel and he puts all of his information on there. But as a long-term buy and hold investor who hasn't invested by the room, I'll have some specific questions to ask him. So yeah, I'll do that interview with Todd. That's a great idea. But also check out Todd Baldwin's channel. That's what he does. He buys properties with 5 or 6 bedrooms, with as close to many bathrooms as bedrooms, rents by the room, and makes multiples of what I do. It's a different investing strategy that's cash flow better than what I'm doing. Mine is the lazy way. Mine is literally my BiggerPockets episode was the lazy way. If I ever have a book, it's probably going to have the word lazy in it. I would say if I ever have a book, because I'm so lazy, I can't write the book. I want to. Mary Jane Press. Understood, but some neighbors feel like they are trying to take us out of here because they are pretty aggressive with the offer and it's hard to find starter homes. They are aggressive with the offers. Sometimes I will get a contract. Literally looks like a sales and purchase agreement with a ridiculous price. And then tiny little wording on the back somewhere that says, this is not an actual offer. We're going to negotiate when we start talking to you in legalese speak. But yeah, it looks very aggressive because they're trying to find the broadest audience to find the motivated seller. Joseph, howdy. You believe you once talked your daughter buying a truck and making money. What do you think about becoming an owner-operator as an asset class? So there are people who are successful as being an owner-operator. I do think that if you're brand new, the best thing to do is get a CDL, get 2 years of experience before you buy your truck, because your insurance, when you have less than 2 years of experience to run a company, is astronomical. Like $15,000 to $20,000 a month compared to $4,000 a month once you have the 2 years of experience. And shop around for insurance, it's different everywhere. You also, if you have 2 years of experience driving for a company, learn the seasons. What hauls, what time of year. How long does a DOT inspection take? How long does it take to have a truck down for oil change? All the things that it's going to take to run your business successfully. Unless you have a mentor who's been doing it, who could teach you that kind of stuff. A lot of times it makes more sense. We do have students at our school that come in and say, I need to get a CDL because I bought a truck. Not all of them are successful, but the ones who get a CDL, drive for a couple of years, have the experience, understand the industry, and then go buy a truck, they have a better shot. Especially if they have the experience, they buy a truck and then they subcontract for some of the companies that they've been working for. So they already have a ready-made list of people to pay them. And I'm sorry, trucking questions are totally cool on this channel. Someday I'm probably going to make a trucking school channel and answer just trucking stuff there. So I'll probably do that. Yeah. Mary Jane, Jimena, there are definitely some aggressive ones out there, and it's disheartening that this is occurring. Yeah, Mary Jane. Many investors are banking on people who have a need to sell due to various circumstances. Absolutely. It doesn't make sense for you to sell, hang on to your property, and use the equity as leverage for future investments. Absolutely. And howdy, Bill. I like that you took your message back to make me lose sleep and wonder what you always said. And you did it twice. Yeah. Tony. Great points. Thank you. Thank you. Mary Jane. Have you used private money lenders to fund the down payment for your deals on MLS? If so, how do you structure the deals so that your PML, primary money lender, gets paid with a cash out refi? Private money lender. Sorry, I caught up. Okay. No, I'm sorry. All I've done is traditional lending. I saved up 5% for my first duplex down payment, which was a long time ago. And a lot of people said that for the last several years, you've had to put down 15% with conventional. So FHA looked more attractive because you could just do 3.5% down if you're going to own or occupy. But I just did a deal deep dive with, it was Kevin and Britt. I hate my memory. Kevin and Britt. And they just purchased a duplex, closed on it not too long ago, and used a 5% down conventional loan. So it's still possible. You have to shop around lenders because they're not all made the same. I have not used private money, hard money, creative financing, just right off the MLS, traditional lending, rinse and repeat. It's slow. There were 2 years between moving from my house into an apartment, renting out the house so that I can get 2 years of rental income on my tax returns. Over those 2 years, I saved the $20,000 for the down payment and closing costs, and there really weren't any immediate repairs, but I bought a duplex to move into, and I had rental income on my tax record so that I had the ability to use the rental income on the duplex because I had a bad debt to income and a low income. Actually, I was only starting out. I was only making $17 an hour when I started investing. That was 10 years ago. So it wasn't like in the 80s. I'm talking 10 years ago, I was making $17 an hour. I had gotten laid off from a police department. I went to work with a trucking company and was set to make $115,000 that year, but they went on strike. So I started working at a CDL school as a CDL instructor, making $17 an hour when I decided to take charge of my finances and start investing. 2 years to get that first duplex, just to get the DTI where I needed it, debt to income ratio, and save the down payment. And then I started house hacking. It was 2 years to save the down payment for the next property, almost 2 years for the next one. So at 6-year mark, I had 4 properties. Like, it doesn't happen quickly. But right about then, the income snowball starts to happen. The rent on the house went up. I paid off the mortgage on the house. The duplex that I was living in, I moved out of into a 4-plex, so I rented out that unit. The rents had gone up, mortgages, I refinanced 2 of them to better rates, kind of like Andrew with his 7-point-something mortgage that he was doing. I had a 6, refinanced to a 3, so my payments went down, but the rents went up. And all of a sudden, the next purchase was a year, and then 6 months, and now about every 6 months or a year, I have a couple $100,000 I have to find a home for. And from 10 years ago, being a single parent with 3 kids who found out about $89,000 in bad debt in my name that I didn't know existed until the divorce, making $17 an hour, to going, I have to find a place for this money, is so bizarre. Terrible problem to have. So I haven't done the hard money thing or the private money thing. I do know that if you're going to use hard money or private money for the down payment, your lender has to know and they have to be okay with it. Your debt to income ratio has to handle both loans hitting your debt to income ratio. And sometimes they'll just say no because you don't have enough skin in the game. So some people will do a version of the BRRRR where you use hard money or private money for the whole purchase and any repairs. Once you're in it and you have that, you've stabilized it, you've seasoned it, then you refinance into a regular loan, especially if you can gain equity. But it's really risky, not something I've done. Don, howdy. Tom, howdy. Tony, 9K, well deserved. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I made this channel because I was in the Facebook groups, BiggerPockets Facebook official fans and the real estate rookie group, and I was answering questions. And some of the questions were kind of the same. Do you need an LLC? How do you screen tenants? How do you get the best interest rates? Which is going to be my next live that I do outside. So I made videos for most of those topics to put on YouTube. And I thought 200 or 300 people might subscribe. And whenever that question comes up on Facebook, instead of, hey, here's my long answer, I go, here's a link to a video, which I then found out you really can't do. If you're in the BiggerPockets group and you make a video and somebody asks a question like, how do I set my rents? I can't link a video saying, here's the binder method, because you're self-promoting. So you get kicked out of the groups. I can link a one rental at a time video, or a lumberjack, or a millennial Mike video, or someone else can link one of mine. So if you ever see somebody ask, do you think you need an LLC? Please, I'm asking you right now, find my LLC rant video and link that for them. Then let them make up their own mind after they see that. I can't link it, but anybody else can. So 200 to 300 people is what I was expecting to watch the channel. When it started to grow, I actually thought I wouldn't make the LLC video till I hit 10,000, but I realized that was hurting a lot of people because I wanted to get my thoughts out there, because so many people are making a huge mistake with LLCs. And literally it's costing people years of investing and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I made it a bit early. But no, I appreciate absolutely everybody who hit subscribe. Thank you. Even after doing, so it went up after the LLC rant, right? I actually wanted to wait till 10,000 because I thought a bunch of people were going to leave the channel. And technically, I only lost a few, and I'm pretty sure they were attorneys because they make their money setting up LLCs. Angel, howdy. Do you see house prices coming down below 2020 levels with interest rising and more inventory? No, because I don't see more inventory. Tax plan was talked about today again, where they're talking about eliminating the 1031 exchange, which is going to stop more people from selling. Interest rates going up limits supply. And Michael Zuber has a really good set of videos that he did with every one of the experts that came on, and he calls it supply destruction. If interest rates are higher, you can't sell a house. Like Jimena has her starter home, she called it, right? It's hard to find a starter home. Well, eventually, Jimena, you might have a couple of niños running around and you want to buy a bigger house. Well, if the interest rates are up, you can't buy the bigger house. So you're going to have to figure out, kids share a bedroom or something. So that's two transactions that don't happen. You don't sell the house that you're in and you don't buy the house you're moving to. Investors pull back because there's not, you can't get the cash flow. Interest rates go up, so there's no cash flow. So that transaction is going away. That's what's going to crash, not prices. The last time interest rates went up was in the 1970s, and they went up into the 18-19 range. Home prices almost tripled because rates don't set prices. The myth, and it sucks. I keep seeing this on so many channels, from Graham Stephan, Meet Kevin, Richard Fain, the people who invest in a lot of different assets, so they don't really focus on one. There's this kind of cool thing to say because it sounds accurate, so it seems like you're saying the right thing. And so for 10 seconds, don't take any mental notes, because I'm going to say something that is not true. Starting now. If interest rates go up 1%, home prices have to come down 10%. Sounds accurate. What happens is, if interest rates go up 1%, your buying power goes down 10%. That doesn't impact prices of houses. The only thing that affects prices of houses is how long they stay on the market. Transactions are going to go down. So Agents and lenders should start looking and working on a side hustle, find another way to make money, because we went from 6 million transactions last year. We're probably going to see 3 or 4 million this year, because interest rates going up makes it harder to buy. People can't find the starter homes. The people can't afford. You're going to lose the pre-qualifications that we had because the interest rates went up so much. But that means that the deals that do happen will go for more, because here's what sets prices. Wages. Wages set prices. And in the last 2 years, we've seen record wage inflation. And I'm not talking about the 3 to 5% that you get if you're staying at your job. Most people know that my generation, we were rewarded for longevity. You stay at a company for 20 plus years, our parents would get a pension. You stay at a company for 20 plus years, now you have a 401k retirement plan. Longevity was where you were rewarded. The longer you were there, the more money you got. The more promotions you got, the more responsibilities you got, the more money you could make. 3 to 5% a year is an increase, right? In the last several months, we have had an experience, what people are calling the Great Resignation. So look at these two statistics that I'm about to say, if I can get the word out. The first statistic is record number of people are leaving their jobs in November, December, and January, those 3 months that we have the data for. Over 4 million people left their jobs. And I don't mean 4 million total. 4 million plus in November, 4 million plus in December, 4 million plus in January, leaving their jobs. Okay, so record people leaving their jobs, the Great Resignation. Here's the other statistic I was going to talk about. Unemployment is the lowest it's been since the 60s. How can this many people be leaving their job and this small a number of people be looking for work? Because people didn't quit working. They quit working for that company. And the easiest way to get the largest increase to your wage is to change companies. Chick-fil-A was starting employees out at $18 an hour. How many people left their $10 to $15 an hour, whatever job, to go be an entry-level position at Chick-fil-A? McDonald's was, people had to be bribed to come back to work. In 2020, 2021, we had unemployment, extended unemployment, extra unemployment, stimulus, all of this money to not work. And people realized, I now have the option to work from home. I can do a distance job, make more money than the one I had to commute to. Might be a total change, but it's going to start at a livable wage, or a wage that I'm going to make more than where I was at. So people change jobs. And instead of a 3 to 5% annual increase in income, they're seeing a 15 to 20% across the board wage increase. So now people that were paying $3,000 or $4,000 for a tiny little apartment in a large city like Seattle, San Francisco, LA, wherever the work was, can now live anywhere and work from home. Pinterest was located in San Francisco. They paid $89 million to break their lease and then gave employees $20,000 each to relocate to work from home wherever they wanted to. It's an entirely new landscape for rentals, creating demand, because now we can homeschool kids, we can work from home. And yeah, some companies are requiring people come back to work. So it actually increased rents too, because not everybody wanted to move to a rural area and purchase. Because what if Pinterest then said, hey, we've changed our mind, we got our lease back, everybody needs to come in. So, and that's just one company. A lot of people didn't buy, they wanted to rent, which drove up prices for investors because we can get the yield. I saw rental increases of 20 to 28%, so almost 30%, 20 to 28% at tenants' request, because rents had gone up so much more than that for an area average, because wages set that. Wages are impacting prices. We're going to continue to see price increases for the rest of this year. That doesn't mean that you don't look. What we're going to look for now is prices were shooting up really fast because we had record wage increasing and we had low interest rates. So now we're taking out one of those. We still have wage increases going up, but we have higher interest rates. So instead of a trajectory like this, we're going to see probably a plateau, a softening of the market. So they're not going to come down. They're just going to stop going up so fast. And the example is one that we've talked about a couple of times with the Three Amigos, of a fourplex that I was looking at about a month ago. In November or December, it probably would have sold in like 3 or 4 hours. It would have hit the market and been gone. It hit the market for 1.3 million, which didn't make sense math-wise for me, but I expected it to be gone in 3 or 4 hours like it would have 2 or 3 months ago. It came out Friday, all day Saturday and Sunday, no offers. So Sunday night, I put in an offer at 1.1 million. The owners magically came back Monday and said, hey, we have some offers in now, so we need your best and final. So I sent back 1.1 million. That was my best and final, because that's where the numbers made sense to me. They then said, well, the other offers weren't higher than yours, so we're not going to sell the property. So that it's still sitting on the market. So a couple of things can happen. They're either going to decide not to sell because they're not a motivated seller and it just made sense to sell for 1.3 because then they can put the money to work. If they were going to 1031, it doesn't make sense to do it now because rates have gone up and the thing that they were going to buy doesn't make sense. Or they're not a motivated seller, so they're not going to sell. Or they're going to acquiesce and lower the price. Or somebody else might find the property and think 1.15 makes more sense and then they get it. Properties might start sitting on the MLS longer. That's what we should be watching for as investors. Make a list of the properties you looked at. Don't just mentally file away. Those are the ones I looked at. Like, these are the ones I looked at. This is the price they're at. This is the price that makes sense for me. And as it sits there for a week or two, start making those under asking offers. That doesn't mean prices are coming down. That means that seller listed it where they thought prices were projecting to, but under that is what makes sense. Hope that helped. Mary, makes sense. Thank you. Thank you. Matt, the lumberjack landlord. Howdy, Matt. How's it going? This computer sucks. Let me tell you. I'm having all kinds of troubles, just like last week. Your kids are in bed, here to watch your fellow amigo drop great knowledge and help folks reach financial freedom. That's the goal. And again, it will go on as long as the questions do. And what are we hitting now? 31 minutes? When did I start this? Hour and a half? Hour and 31 minutes? Cool. So we're getting there. Larry, one of the biggest, and I'm getting messages, make sure it's not people telling me the sound quit working, right? Okay, not. One of the biggest risks as a real estate investor is rent regression. Agreed. That's the thing that we all fear. Have you ever researched or known of an area that had declining rents? Any suggestions on what to watch out for? So I'm half a century old. I've never seen rent regression ever in any of the markets that I've lived in. The only one that I've heard of that most people know about is places like Detroit where car manufacturers left. So when we invest, one of the reasons why I talk about several economic drivers is I wouldn't want to invest in a place like Port Angeles, Washington, where they had a mill. And when the mill closed down, it was 20, 30 years before somebody finally made a movie called Twilight and Forks became famous. And now Port Angeles is a travel place. Right? Like there was decades there of just dying community. Detroit, same thing, cars move away. So I want to invest in a place where there are, and I listed them off earlier, a base, a port, a college, a hospital, Boeing or Amazon or some large company, population of 100,000 or more. So 2 or 3 of those elements together so that you don't have 1 or 2 things that can change that can make rents drop in an area. Most people that I talk to when they're telling me, don't invest in real estate, it's so risky. Well, look what happened in 2008 to those other people. And there was a video on One Rental at a Time, which I'll probably put a link in the comments to this video later. Matt and Mike took a comment where somebody was talking about how risky it is to do buy and hold investing. And they break down the 5 ways you can lose money in real estate. And then they go through all 5 of those to see if my investing strategy hits that. And my investing strategy doesn't touch any of those those ways that you can lose money. So I really appreciate 2 friends going to bat to point out, hey, you're right. It's risky to invest, but here's the thing that we're doing to not do that. An example is in 2008, a whole bunch of people lost their houses to foreclosure. Well, when they lost their house to foreclosure, they became renters, which increased demand. So in my areas in 2009 and 10, rents went up. So I have not seen rent regression. There's a few things that we do to protect our portfolio. I talked about several economic drivers. I diversify my tenant base, military, Section 8, working and retired, so that if for some reason the base closes down or there's a prolonged government shutdown or something that impacts, it's going to hit 1/3 of my tenants. So what I would want is a good amount of reserves, and reserves scale with the size of your portfolio. When I had 7 or less units, I would keep 10,000 in an account that I didn't touch. That was my emergency scorched earth money. As I've grown up to 16 units now, I've raised that to 30,000 that I just don't touch while I'm working. I still have a W-2. So if I stopped working, that would increase. And if my portfolio grows, I'm going to also increase that. So I have reserves. I have diversified tenant base. I keep my properties spread out too, so that they're all affected by different economic drivers. To where if rent goes down in one area, let's say the base closes, or bases do an evaluation of the area average rents, and then they set their BAH, basic allowance for housing. So in Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington in 2015-16, that went up about $400, and everyone's rents quickly scaled to that, setting the area average. If, I've never seen it, a base were to adjust the BAH lower, it would go up like rockets, but come down like feathers. I think it would come down to where that base set the area average at. So it's possible. So what I also do is I don't over leverage. I want to keep around 70% levered. So if my net worth was $1 million, or not net worth, my gross worth was $1 million, I would want 700,000 in debt. If I'm buying a property for 100,000, I want to have 70,000 levered and 30,000 in equity. That's the goal, the target to get to. So I might not start there because I only put down 20 or 25%, but within a year or two, with appreciation and principal pay down, it's going to get to the leveraged amount that I want. I don't pull out home equity lines of credit. I don't do cash out refinances to take money. I probably could, because I'm around 50 to 55% levered. I'm actually, with the appreciation we're seeing in the last year, probably even dropping below 50%. I want to be around 70. First, if rents were to go down, my rents could drop 50%, and I'm still not out of pocket. So total rents coming in now is a little over 24,000. Mortgages going out is with, and then setting aside for repairs and maintenance and vacancies, around 11,000. So literally rents could go in half, and I'm still not touching my own personal money. That's how we handle rent regression. We plan for it. I'm a bit under levered, so I either could have, when Matt and Mike told me to, taken out money a couple months ago to have more money to put to work somewhere. Or I could use my VA loan finally on my next property, which I have never used yet, and purchase my next fourplex with no money down and have it more levered, because it's an overall levered position. But I sleep like a baby, because I've never seen a rent drop. And the biggest rent drops that I think I've heard of, other than places like Detroit, where one manufacturer ran everything, was 10%. So to be ready for 50, but in my life I've never seen it and I've never heard of it, it's pretty easy to do that. So don't over lever. Diversify properties, diversify tenant base. The purpose of this video at the beginning was focusing on one asset class, learning all of this about real estate, or if you pick stocks, figuring out how to diversify in that. If you have dividend stocks, figuring out how to diversify those. If you grow a business, figuring out how to protect the business the same way. So focusing on one asset until you become wealthy, and then diversifying. And like I said earlier, I'm not even there yet. Janet, howdy, Matt. Chester, one of the things I was thinking of was combining the binder strategy with Todd's house hack, rent by the room strategy. So anytime somebody's renting, I've used the binder strategy on roommates. I've had roommates. I actually, because I travel so much, I still rent out rooms in my unit of my fourplex. Used the binder strategy on them this last year. So it does work, because rent by the room, how much do rooms rent for? You get an area average, same thing. Absolutely. Janet, howdy. How do you feel prices will go down a little bit, infecting an interest rate up? No, I think prices are going to continue to go up. Hopefully you said that when I was just talking about how prices are going to continue to go up. I still see prices going up, but not as fast as they have for the last year. And so really watch the properties and see how long they've been listed, because they're projecting where they think the prices are going to go. They overshot because interest rates went up so fast. That doesn't mean they're going to drop below where they were in November or December, but they might come just really close to back down without going up as much, especially as rents are catching up, because wages set prices and wages set rents. And both of those are still going up. Chester, howdy, Matt. Joseph, howdy, but not today. GoPro Hero, howdy. Do you have any advice on doing a 3D scanning side income with using the Matterport Pro? No, I don't have any advice on that. I know that Matt is looking at doing 3D printing houses, but I don't. I know that if you're going to start a side hustle, start with the customer in mind. Figure out who the end buyer is going to be, and can you produce it and get it to them in a way that they're going to find it. I do like side hustles. I do have a video, a live stream that I did a few weeks ago where I was talking about how many side hustles it took to become a millionaire. Rent independence. Howdy. This landlord trucker loves your channel. Awesome. And here's what's great. I read as I'm seeing it. And I keep expecting somebody that found from the Reddit group that found the Business Insider articles to come here and put something horrible in the comments, which I will read. J. Markey, Dion, what do you do when a tenant moves in a new boyfriend or girlfriend who was not on the original lease? Have you ever run this into this scenario? I have. I've had tenants move in. The only time I really kind of care is if it's a Section 8 and I know they qualify based on the number of people living there. All I do is just tell the tenants to make sure they report, because if they get caught, they're going to get kicked out by the program. I don't really care. Once they're in place and I have somebody who passed my credit, because my criteria was a credit score of 700 and no evictions ever. And I don't ever check their income. I don't care. I know people making six figures who are late on every bill. So I don't care about income. And if you do check income, you're usually eliminating people that make most of their money through tips, like bartenders, waiters, cosmetologists. So I don't do that. But if somebody met my criteria to move in and they move someone else in, I haven't cared. It hasn't come up as an issue yet where they break out and then the one who met my criteria wants to move out. That would be the concern. Then the other person would have to meet or match to renew a lease to stay there. That would be my consideration. But it's not much different than having a cosigner. Especially if you're renting by the room, and let's say you're by a college and you have students living there, a lot of them don't have the credit score, income, or what you're going to be looking for. So mom or dad are going to co-sign for them. Well, they're not living there. The person that you have in there doesn't meet your criteria. It would be the same. So I kind of don't care if they move in a boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse or somebody who doesn't meet the criteria, as long as they did, because the lease is between me and them. I would want them to let me know, but I haven't cared. Carrie, do you have any other thoughts on doing a home equity line of credit on an investment property? The first question, whenever it comes to home equity line of credit, cash out refinance, or selling a property is, what will you do with the funds? Do you have a place to put the funds to work? What I didn't like was when the Real Estate Rookie podcast first came out, Ashley Kerr and Felipe Mejia were the hosts. And Felipe always talked about on his properties, his goal was to have a line of credit, and that's his reserve. If there's ever an economic event that causes you to need those reserves, that is probably going to be the economic event that makes the lender shut off that HELOC or line of credit. So if you have a place to take the money out and put it to work, and if it doesn't cost you anything to get the home equity line of credit, sure, have one. But I don't like using home equity lines of credit. You have the ability to pay it off quickly because they have adjustable rates. And if it's bad as a reserve, because they can close it off. And here's another aspect, and I get this from Matt, the lumberjack landlord, to steal a page out of his book. He had a line of credit, and hopefully I get the numbers even close, for $75,000. He had used $25,000, which meant he had $50,000 remaining, meaning he was at about 33% credit utilization on that loan. The banks get scared. They canceled the home equity line of credit. Doesn't mean they call it. You don't have to pay the $25,000 that he has out. That's still making payments, right? But it cancels the $50,000. So he no longer has access up to the $75,000, which put it down to where he was at, which gave him 100% credit utilization on that loan product. So that's another impact that you can get. So make sure that you can handle that in your debt to income and your credit score. Do you have a place to put the money to work? My brother retired with 10 paid off properties. What he did is he had a paid off property that he lived in. He took out a home equity line of credit. He used that money to basically kind of do a BRRRR project. Bought a property, all cash from the home equity line of credit that needed a lot of work, did the work himself, fixed it up, turned it into a rental, and then he funneled all of his funds to pay off that home equity line of credit till it cut it down to zero. rinsed and repeated till he got to 10. Paid off the last one, shut down his business, and now he's traveled the world for 7 years, literally doing anything and everything that he wants to, living off of the income off of paid off rentals. And even house hacks. The house that he lives on has an ADU. So it's paid off and the ADU is paying him rent. So he's killing it. There is a way to use home equity lines of credits to do this. And he pulled it off. I didn't have a paid off property, so I haven't done that. And in the beginning, didn't have the ability to funnel enough funds to pay off a home equity line of credit before interest rates might change. How many people have had a home equity line of credit for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years and have been loving the interest rates this year are going to panic? Interest rates just changed, and it looks like they're going to change a few more times. That's going to affect adjustable rate loans. So be careful with that. Adam, howdy. If you make $500,000 net a year, how would you invest? Do I make $500,000 a year now? Gross? Yeah, but then I got mortgages and stuff. So no, I don't make that much. $500,000, I would depend on, let me think on the math here. It's currently making about half that probably. It would just be a faster timeline of what I'm doing now. Save up a down payment, buy a cash flowing asset, rinse and repeat. I self-manage. You might get enough properties that way to where you'd want a property manager, but I would make work optional as quick as possible. The problem with a lot of people who, and not that there's a lot of people who do, but of the people who make $500,000 a year, the problem with a lot of them, I think I got the grammar right on that, is that their lifestyle becomes a $500,000 a year lifestyle. You have to replace or more than replace that, because that's the freedom number. One of the reasons it was so easy for me to reach financial freedom is because I lived a fairly frugal life. So I thought I would need about $30,000 a year to be financially free. I lived on that, a little bit more than that as a police officer, but I had a mortgage and I was paying taxes on that. So this is after taxes and no mortgage because I was house hacking. Now the cash flow is over 4 times that. So yes, I've reached financial independence, but it's not $500,000 a year. So it's an economy of scale. Started out making less than $50,000 a year, able to get the cash flow in less than 10 years to over almost 3 times what I used to make in a year. So if you're making $500,000, make a 10-year plan to be getting triple that, or at least double that in passive income, so that you can handle rent regression, so that you can have a stable portfolio that's spread out. I pretty much do exactly what I'm doing, just on a larger scale. I still would stay away from stocks and retirement accounts. And I wouldn't start a business because I'm not an entrepreneur. A lot of people say I want to be an entrepreneur because I don't want a boss. If you're an entrepreneur, everybody with a Yelp account that's your customer is your boss. And then they say, I don't want a job because I don't want to work 40 hours a week. Well, most entrepreneurs work 80 or 90 hours a week. I don't want to do either one of those. I'm an investor. So I worked. So I'm making a lot less than $500,000 a year. And when I started, I was making less than 1/10 of that to reach financial freedom. I just invested and put the money to work. I would do the same thing. CJ, howdy. Not that you have placed many tenants, but the ones you have and will in the future, do you do move in, move out checklists when they move in? If so, do you go walk the property when they move in? I do, because it's been so few. If it was a bunch, I don't know that I would. Yeah, I probably would, because it's still really not that much. I only have 16 units and I've only had 2 tenant turnovers, and I've placed a few tenants in properties I purchased that were empty. I prefer to buy tenant occupied, but I've gotten some empty ones too. I usually go with a tenant. I put my phone on record and I walk through and I tell the tenant, I'm just recording every wall, every window, every blind, every door, and I'm done. 30 seconds. Don't do a checklist. Don't do anything on paper. If there's any damage that the tenant wants to point out, we can write it down. Haven't had that. I usually have everything done by the time the tenant even gets there for the walkthrough. So a quick video recording of the room, which has metadata, so it would tell you the date and the location it was recorded, but I also say, as I'm walking around, this is the address I'm in, this is the date, this is the name of the tenant, and that way it looks like there's a recording, which there is. And I email myself that video so that there's a record of it. Andrew, you often mention your spreadsheet method. Is there a chance you have a template available we can get from you? So yes, Andrew, email me, or anybody else email me. I share my spreadsheet, which literally is kindergarten version of a spreadsheet. Basically, it has a tab for income, a tab for expenses. With the expenses is the date, the location it was spent at, so Lowe's, Home Depot, massage, whatever. The amount, the taxes, the property it's assigned to, and then notes, so that the CPA who knows what depreciation is, whether it's scheduled, bonus, amortized, things I don't even know how they work, pay a professional to do it, knows how to categorize that. And then the income literally just lists the property, the months, whether it was rent, or if there's somebody the ones that pay water or something. It is literally basic. There are some equations in there where it totals up the rent into a thing to make it easy for the CPA. And then down here, there's a thing that totals up how much I've spent, and then the taxes. So I could break it out if I need to and say how much I've done on each property. That's why I list the property that it's for, so you can change it. I usually have it listed by date so that I know throughout the year all my expenses are in there. But if I want to go, how much did I spend on my Sacramento Street property, I click on the name of the properties to orient it that way, and then I can get the totals that way. It's super basic. So email me, I'll send it to you. Feel free to add or take away whatever you think you need to. Nancy, howdy. I had a train and a beach. There you go. ML, howdy. Are you playing Elden Ring? I am not. I am still, I'm mostly in Florida, so I can do scuba, but I brought my VR system and I'm playing a lot of Zenith while I'm here. That's the only way to get cardio other than carrying tanks, because scuba is not really a lot of work unless you're going on like a distance dive or a wall dive, but I'm just doing usually 45 foot. Supposed to next week go to a place where there's 3 down ships where you you're not supposed to go in the ships, but we'll see. Mackenzie, howdy. I'm excited. This is the first live video I've caught. Cool. Well, this is your chance to live ask a question, any question about real estate or investing, and I can give you some good advice. If you want bad advice, ask a relationship question. I got a ton of bad advice for that, but I'm glad you made it for the live. I look forward to you coming to more in the future. My goal is to take the simple tactics and strategies that I've used to go from a not great financial position to financial freedom, and give it to people in a way that is repeatable. So hopefully while you're here, you have some questions that I can help with that. The great thing that I like about these kind of videos is you never know what conversation a question is going to spark, because I like to make videos that I know people want to see, because I've had the question come in several times. But there are topics that I wouldn't think of unless the question was asked during a live. North Cal, howdy. Any issues tenants subletting? Depends if it was for a business. So no, there's no problem with it. If it's for a business, I would want a copy of the business insurance. Subletting, I have got some that have roommates. It's basically subletting. I don't have a problem with that, as long as the one person is passed, kind of like a co-signer, is on the lease, meets my criteria. Then I haven't even really checked with the roommates. I've had some more roommates kind of cycle in and out. Rent is expensive, and whatever I can do to help the tenants make it easier for them to pay, I'm totally on board with that. Yeah. Bill O'Connell, howdy. You know any good websites to self-educate about Section 8? I don't know any good websites. I have a video on my channel called Section 8 How To, where I talk about a few things on how to make more money, how to use the binder strategy on them, how to get your inspections done quicker, or to get approvals on your inspections quicker. It's pretty basic. You still have a lease between you and a person, and then you have a contract with you and the housing authority to pay a part of that person's rent. It's really not that complex. Knowing your county is the biggest difference. I invest in 2 counties. Thurston County, Washington. The Section 8 Housing Authority is amazing. I will have Section 8 tenants there as long as I'm an investor. In Pierce County, they can F that flying F off. because they're just rude and I don't want to deal with that office. So get a hold of your housing authority. And in most counties, it is the housing authority. In some counties, it is a nonprofit that runs the voucher program. Contact them. Are they looking for more units? Do they communicate politely? Do they communicate quickly? And anytime you're interacting with a government agency, don't text, call, leave a voicemail, or go in person. None of those are successful forms of communication when it comes to a government agency. The only thing that works is an email. When possible, CC that person's manager. A lot of times managers just get their emails, but if you find out the manager's name, CC it. An email gives you a date, timestamp, is admissible in court, and gets you the quickest responses. Even in an area where they are proactive and good to deal with, I still only communicate with email when it comes to government agencies. That's CDL, Department of Licensing, rental, housing authority, anything government related. Eric, howdy. And yes, you can get Helocs with a fixed rate, but the lenders can cancel a home equity line of credit any day for any reason. You have no control over that. And they're usually a 10-year fixed rate. So for 10 years, you'd get that fixed rate. So each loan and each lender is totally different. So it's kind of like one of the reasons why, and you got a good point, Eric, one of the reasons why I stick with 4 units or less is because I like 30-year fixed rate debt. Well, Convoy has 40-year fixed rate debt on up to 29 units. So that completely changes the types of properties that I can look for, because lending is what keeps me out of commercial loans. So all lenders are not made the same, and the current data with the lender you're working with is what helps you make the decision on what you're going to do next. Janelle, howdy. When do you anticipate more inventory increasing? Is it rate dependent or based on another factor? We have a, what do you call it? The people in office, a current regime who is trying to remove the 1031. And the wording says, if this goes into effect, it is effective since January 1st, 2022, which means anybody right now thinking of doing a 1031 where they would make a certain amount of money might not be able to take that tax benefit at the end of the year in an almost ex post facto kind of way, is going to decimate supply. Higher rates means the move-up buyer is not going to go. Michael Zuber has this on his channel where he's gone through with every one of his experts on the several categories of people that are just not going to sell. First-time home buyers being priced out, investors losing yield, so they can't sell to 1031, which kills 2 transactions. Inventory is going to get smaller. Demand is going to kind of stay the same. You might lose some people who can't qualify for the prices. Prices are going to continue. I think it's not that inventory is going to go up. It's that an inventory that can't sell for the price the seller was expecting is going to sit on the market longer. That doesn't mean more inventory. And Michael Zuber says this really good from One Rental at a Time. In 2021, most of us, myself included, were saying we have a supply problem. And we missed it. That's not what the problem was. Michael Zuber knew the problem. Actually, he didn't know it in the beginning because he was calling it a supply problem too. About 2 months ago, he had the epiphany that we have a demand problem. In 2021, we had over 6 million transactions happen. That means that we had the normal amount of supply that we had the year before. We just had a ton of demand because we saw record wage inflation, which is setting prices and why prices are continuing to go up. And we had low interest rates. So now we're losing the low interest rates, but we still have the wage inflation. So we're going to see prices go up, but less transactions. I think instead of 6 million this year, we'll be lucky to see 4. Probably going to see more because I always overestimate everything. I found out when I interact with people like Michael Zuber and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord who have decades worth of experience, I'll do things like make a dollar bet with them on where I think rates are going to be at the end of the year. And I underestimated the timeline or overestimated the length of the timeline. But one of the things, and this is really important to take away, if you like my content and you think because I've reached financial freedom, I've been investing for 10 years, I went from a bad position to a really good position, and we're finally at the 2-hour mark. I'm going to lose my voice. I wouldn't listen to a word I said as an investor Because I started investing after 2008. What I do, what I've learned and what I've implemented, I've learned from investors like Michael Zuber and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, guys who've been doing this for decades, who've lived through the cycles. That's how I know to not over leverage. That's how I know to diversify properties. That's how I know to go one rental at a time instead of a 10-unit apartment complex. The strategies that I've used to have confidence in my ability to survive another 2008 if it happened tomorrow is because what I'm teaching is what I've implemented that I've learned from investors like them. If what I was doing was only mine, and I've been investing when prices have been going up for 10 years, people have made mistakes in the last 3 years, totally screwed up. Repair time, repair cost, after repair value, and looked smart, made money because the delays that they had, appreciation fixed their problems. So if I only had my information from my investing and I wasn't repeating what I learned in BiggerPockets and what I implemented and saw how the experience of it was, I wouldn't watch my channel. I literally wouldn't. But I'm taking their knowledge and mixing it with things like the binder strategy, which Matt the Lumberjack Landlord was always doing a version of, which he did through emails. But I'm trying to put it into, other than my live streams, I'm trying to put it in nice short 10-minute videos so you can go and look up specific answers to questions. My live streams, I start them with, this is going to be a nice short live stream because sometime I'm going to log in and there's going to be nobody here with questions and it'll be a 10-minute video. But not today. Today, luckily, we've got some good questions coming in and we just hit the 2-hour mark. I'm hoping to go for at least another hour. So I'm hoping that some questions come in that we get to use to take some of the stuff that's in here and put it onto this video. So where was I? I was at North Cal. I love it when I lose my spot. There we go. So Eric with the fixed rate. Drew. Howdy. Looking for my second unit now. First was a duplex. Just went through the lender to get pre-approved. Awesome. So if the second one is going to be an investment purchase, great. If the second one is going to be your second house hack, that is amazing. That is when the biggest change to my income snowball happened. The second house hack was great because that's when you get to rent out the unit you just moved out of and house hack to where you're going. Congratulations. Chester. I'm excited for when transactions slow down. I'm excited too. I'm excited because we might see things sit on the market longer, which gives us time to have competitive offers in. People overpaying for owner-occupied properties is simply insane. Zuber was right. The lending market drives housing market and not vice versa. What you can do with lending sells everything. In 2010, when prices were rock bottom, some people didn't invest because they were scared because they just saw prices drop, weren't sure how low they were going to go. But the other thing is people who wanted to buy couldn't because lenders were like, nope. You can only have 4 in your name. So anybody who had 6 like me couldn't get any more in your own name. Your ninja loans went away. So lending sets transactions. You're right. Lending drives the market. Yep. Chester. Janelle. Best guess is this time next year through the rest of the year, we're going to see decreasing demand and more motivated sellers, but not more inventory until early mid-2023 earliest. I agree. Nancy, howdy. To your list of locations. Did I miss something? Add a train and a beach to your list of locations. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah. No, that's right. Transportation hub and a destination. Absolutely. I don't have those in my current list, so that's a good idea. Keith, howdy. Adam, what are your thoughts on commercial properties as in 5+ unit properties? That was my deal breaker was lending. Lending drives the market. Lending drove my decisions. I wanted 30-year fixed rate debt. I don't want any adjustable rates. I do not want a loan reevaluation period. No matter what, I wouldn't buy those type of properties. But like I said, Convoy Lending currently has, and I need to verify this because I'm going to be making offers once I verify this, 40-year fixed rate debt. So it's 10 years interest only, then 30 years regular amortized loan, fixed rate on up to 29 units. So if that's true, when I verify that, as my down payment increases, I will be looking at properties of any number to do. I'm pretty sure it has to be investment. It can't be owner occupied house hacking. So it would be an investment down payment. You lose the house hacking option or some of the benefits to house hacking that way. You don't lose the reduce or eliminate your housing costs. It's probably easier with more units, but you lose the down payment. You lose the better interest rate. Jay Markey, do you require tenants to get renter's insurance within a certain amount of time after signing the lease? Do you require minimum account of coverage? Thanks. I haven't required a minimum amount of coverage. I usually connect them with my Geico rep and I say, you need to get renter's insurance. It's like $9 a month. You need to list me as there's some term that Geico uses to have me also on the policy. I see that when they get it, and some of my tenants watch my content. So here's a behind the scenes thing. I never see it again after that. So they might get it, have it for a month, and then get rid of it. I wouldn't know. I don't ask for verification. I honestly really don't care. I have homeowners insurance on the property, which will cover everything but their stuff. So their stuff is at risk, not my property. And then I have an umbrella policy on me just in case some suit ever goes above the threshold of the policy that I have on the property. But requiring renters insurance is good, especially when I've had some younger tenants who give me the deer in the headlights look and you go, the renter's what? And then I educate them on what renter's insurance is and how a benefit it can be to them. If they're in a 4-unit and there's a fire in the 4th unit and their unit smells, their renter's insurance will pay for their move, their storage, their furniture, everything, which my insurance will not do because that's their personal stuff. Monica, howdy, who also took a message back to make me lose sleep all night and wonder what she was saying. Keith, true Chester Williams, 18 months and then it will break. Good. Drew, howdy. How much money do you think is good for a rainy day fund? I have one duplex and I'm thinking around 10K. That is what I did. I always say when I had 7 units or less, that was 1 unit or 5 units. So 7 units or less, I kept 10,000. That's going to cover a roof. It's going to cover a water heater, probably most types of foundation issues. It's going to cover a tenant not paying rent for a few months. Once I got past 7 units, Murphy's law is if something can go wrong, it will. Murphy's 4th corollary is if a sequence of events can go wrong, they will, and in the worst possible order. So as your portfolio scales, that fund scales too. So it's up to from 7 to 16 units. I've raised it to 30,000. This is also while I'm working. If I ever stop working, I'm going to probably raise it or double it. And if my portfolio grows, I'm probably going to raise it and get it around 50, which is, I think, the number that Michael Zuber and Matt the Lumberjack landlord keep in their emergency no-touch 'em fund. I call it a swan account. Sleep well at night. But 10K sounds great if you have one duplex. And that you can leave, I would leave it at 10K for the next property. I don't think you need to scale that up for the first couple of properties. But once you start having 6, 7, 8 units, then I might increase that some. Nick, howdy. Love your content. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have you looked into buying properties in opportunity zones? I have not, because government policy changes too much too often and usually not in the investor's favor. So I think if somebody has a portfolio like Michael Zuber or Matt the Lumberjack landlord, where they have hundreds of units, and you want to put some money to work in an opportunity zone to get the better return and get the benefits, and if the government changes their mind halfway through, you don't care as much, sure. But a newer investor like me, or maybe some of the people that watch this channel, where I've done less than 10 properties, I only have 16 units. I don't want to tie up hundreds of thousands of dollars in something that could change in 6 months. So I haven't done it myself. I haven't even done the research on it. It could be something, but my goal is not to have hundreds of units like Mike or Matt. It's one of the reasons why I didn't do a cash out refinance and get more money to put to work in case there are price corrections in the future. I want a total of somewhere between 20 and 30 units total. I'll stop buying. I want 10 mortgages in my name. And at that point, I'll probably stop buying. I was looking for financial freedom. and this is going to sound really weird, and there's no way to say this where it's not a brag. Um, and the reason I want to say this is because I want to help people watching do the same thing. I live in Washington State. I work a job. I went into my boss and I said, hey, I'm going to go to Florida and I'm going to scuba dive for a month or two until I get bored, and then I'll be back. That's why the face is all red, right? Because it's sunny down here. I paid, what the plan was, $5,000 for a Verbo. But earlier I talked about getting evicted from the Verbo. And then I was going to spend $5,000 a month on scuba and food and a little bit of alcohol while I'm here, right? So that's $10,000. I'm going to spend $10,000 a month for a month or two. So if I stay 1 month, I'm going to spend 10. If I stay 2, I'm going to spend 20. My cash flow from not work, and work is still paying me because I brought a laptop and I'm going to do some work while I'm here, but cash flow from rentals is just about $14,000 a month. So I'm going to come here on a vacation and goof off for as long as I want. I don't know, 1 month, 2 months, 2 years, I don't know, somewhere in there. Every month that I'm here, spending this much money. When I go home, there will be more money in my account than when I left. And like I said, there's no way to say that where it's not a brag, but what I'm trying to say is you can do that. Get to that financial freedom where I could travel and do anything I want anywhere. Almost. I mean, I probably can't afford to visit New York or parts of Europe that are too expensive, right? I'm not there yet. I don't have Matt or Mike cash flow numbers or Todd Baldwin cash flow numbers. But when I get to 20 to 30 units and I have 10 mortgages in my name with 2 or 3 more fourplexes, which is my goal, I'll buy duplexes if they look good too, if they have the right return. I'll have money to even go to the expensive places. Not that Florida's super cheap, but that's my goal, is to get this information to as many people as possible. And I said this on the Lumberjacks channel the other day. I feel like I'm absolutely failing as a communicator. Like, this is not complicated. It's very simple. It's not easy, right? It took discipline. It took avoiding life creep for at least 5 years. It took discipline to keep doing rinse and repeating. But anyone can do what I've done. And my channel in a year just hit 9,000 subscribers. Like, that's nothing compared to the size of some of the channels that are out there, right? And some of the channels out there are just preaching, screaming from the top of the rafters, housing crash, housing correction, and they've been doing it since 2013, telling people don't buy, wait for the crash, wait for the correction. So those people have now missed a decade of cash flow, appreciation, principal pay down, waiting for something that still hasn't happened. So 9,000 people versus a couple 100,000 people for the people saying there's a crash coming. Yeah, it sucks. I feel like I'm absolutely failing as a communicator, not getting this information out to more people. Working on it though. And I want to say thanks to anybody who saw my Facebook post today and went to Maskey Finance, because he was 13 away from 300 subs. And so I wanted to see if we could do it. We got him over 300. So I want to help keep Mark motivated, because his channel is great. He's a retired cop. He's got like 20 rentals. He invested at distance. He's got all the kind of strategies to help make work, more optional than what I'm doing. Like Millennial Mike, he invested at distance. I live in a high cost of living area, but some people can't invest where they're at. So they've got information for doing that. So again, good channels, nice and small. Channels talking fear and clickbait are huge. Shalquan, howdy. What do you think is the best neighborhood in Miami area to buy a rental property in? I am not qualified to answer that. Wherever you invest, you want to have boots on the ground. Either you live there or you used to live there and you know the neighborhoods, because 2 blocks away can be totally different, especially investing in Florida, where flood insurance completely varies based on where you're buying, year the house was built, elevation of the house, all that kind of stuff. So if you don't live there or used to live there, you know somebody who lives there who works in the industry. So a property manager or an agent or somebody who you trust so much that you're pretty sure they're going to come to your funeral if it happens, that will actually help you invest there. Because if you don't live in that area, believe me, when you reach out to an agent in that area, they're going to have a really great deal. They're going to have the best deal ever that every local investor has passed on for a reason. So I wish I could actually help you with that. I know that a lot of people are moving to Florida, increasing demand. So I anticipate appreciation here in Florida. boots on the ground, do the work. It's going to take 60 to 90 days to learn what an area average is and figuring out, maybe contacting property managers or agents, or if you don't live in the area, who could tell you the neighborhoods to avoid, ones that you couldn't safely go collect rent in, because those exist everywhere. That's how I would narrow down the market. And then I would figure out, what size can you handle? Michael Zuber wanted to invest, and he picked a zip code in the beginning, and that was too much data. So he actually cut it down to even smaller than the area that a zip code covers. So depending on your bandwidth to learn, you might look for smaller than Miami, because that's fairly large. You might look for a suburb of Miami, and then a half of that, and then the good side of that, to narrow it down to the market that you can learn. And I would pick one or two small areas there to study for at least 2 months to figure out what area averages, and then look for the deals that are better than that. Hope that helps. Rent independence. Do you ever get people trying to sneak in a pet by calling it an ESA? Nope, not once ever. You know how? Allow pets, because I don't want to deal with the mental stress of some tenant thinking they're getting one over on me. I just allow pets. If it's a certain size or an aggressive breed that your insurance labels as, this is the type of dog we don't allow, the tenant has to get insurance to cover it. It's never been an issue. I've never had that come up, but that's my caveat, to where if they brought in something that my insurance would have a problem with, and the tenant would have to provide insurance for that. But one of the main reasons I allow pets, and I said this earlier when I was talking about criteria that helps limit tenant turnover, is people don't like to relocate an animal. And if you move a pet, and that pet's human moves with it, that is still a relocation. So one of the things I've done to have a total of 2 tenant turnovers in 10 years, one of those things is I allow pets. So I've never had to deal with the stress of, oh, you took 5 minutes to get some BS paper printed off the internet to tell me that this is a support animal, or whatever acronym they want to use to make it seem like it's a legal thing. I don't have to worry about it. And I suppose if it was their only pet and they provided that, you might not be able to charge a pet fee and a pet monthly rent. I haven't had that. The one tenant that did have the form for an animal had 3 dogs and a cat. So I charged the $250 non-refundable pet fee. Don't call it a deposit, even non-refundable, because a deposit by definition is refundable. Learned that from Mindy Jensen of BiggerPockets. And then I charge $25 a month per pets, not per pet, just one pet or 5 pets or whatever. So if I ever had a tenant move in who had one animal and it was a support, I probably wouldn't get the $250 deposit or the monthly rent. It just hasn't been of the pet. Hasn't been an issue yet. Adriana, howdy, Adriana. I would like to know your thoughts about commercial property such as storage or shop space, about 1,000 square feet per unit. I'm thinking to buy land and build in things. So the loan structure would be the biggest thing I would look at. Can you get fixed rate debt to do that doesn't have a loan reevaluation period? Those are the things that stop me from doing anything commercial. In 7 years, we don't know where interest rates are going to be, and we don't know if there's going to be something like a pandemic that can cause you to have a bad year. And that lender can say you need to either sell or refinance with someone else, or cut us a big check to cover this gap in what we think you should have. I don't want to deal with any of that. So if you can get fixed rate debt and you study the market to figure out how saturated it is or what the demand is for storage there. I have added storage to properties where a tenant asked for a shed and said they would pay an extra $100 a month, because that's how much a storage shed of the same size would cost in the area, but they would have it in the backyard, so they wouldn't have to go to it. I've done that. But doing a build, is your municipality friendly to builds? What is the permit process like? Are you in city limits or in county limits? Who would you be checking with? Check with contractors to see what would be required. Do you have the funds to cover what you call a burn rate? Before a property is generating revenue, you're going to have expenses. How will you cover those expenses before you have enough tenants in place in each storage unit to cover the cost of the property? I would lay out all that as a timeline. One of the reasons I invest the way I do is because it's very simple. I find a property that doesn't need a lot of work. Hopefully it has a tenant in place. I don't want to even have to screen for a tenant. I buy it, I save up a down payment, I buy it. What you're talking about is being entrepreneurial. buying land, building land, turning it into a business. That's a whole bunch of steps and a whole bunch of things to learn, and regulations in your area to learn. Understanding, like I said, saturation or demand. What is your likelihood of it continuing to make that amount of money once you're done? And what is your lending going to look like? So there's a lot of things to look at there that are probably the reasons I haven't done that yet. And then one of the other reasons why I haven't done it is the title of this video is how diversification or diversifying will keep you broke. I invest in buy and hold small multifamily in 2 counties. If I started doing flipping, wholesaling, the BRRRR, storage, short term, at a distance, and I started adding all these things, the thing I like to say is if you chase 5 rabbits, you starve. My one rabbit is buy and hold small multifamily, sometimes house hacked, very strategic, very simple, very repeatable. So if you get into storage, make sure you learn all of the aspects of it and you take the time. Like I've mastered buy and hold rental properties. Mastered is 10,000 hours dedicated to learning a skill. I've done at least 10,000 hours, not just in running the business of rentals, but in podcasts, audiobooks, those kind of things, being in mastermind groups, getting around people who are doing this. So it's a viable option. It just takes an entire different skill set that you're going to have to develop. Thank you. That was a good question. And then my chat moved. Cool. Monica, howdy. Do you have any recommendations on where to invest? I just sold my property in Los Angeles City because of the moratorium. My ex-renter did not pay the rent for 1 year and her application for rental relief got denied. Wow. That sucks. They changed the rental relief thing to where the tenant doesn't have to apply it. There was a way for owners to apply it. I haven't had to do that, so I don't know how it works. I just know that they were talking about they changed it to where the owner could apply for it. Because the problem was a lot of tenants just stopped paying, but were still working. So they wouldn't qualify for relief. So the landlord was still out the money. And then they changed it. $46 billion was set aside in COVID rent relief that the owners now are supposed to be able to apply for. So hopefully that can be something to help. Picking a market is something very difficult to do. Where do you have a tactical advantage? I actually have a live stream that I started one time, literally on picking a market. So if you could look at my channel, the live streams are in a playlist. I don't know which number it was, but this is the criteria I would go through to pick a market. Where do you have a tactical advantage? You live there or used to live there, so you know the neighborhoods. You have somebody there that you trust so much they're going to come to your funeral to know the neighborhoods. You build your team, which you're going to need, probably if it's at a distance, property manager, handyman, how to find contractors there. You're going to look for things like several economic drivers, population growth, and population size is also one of those economic drivers. For me, I want at least, 2 is the minimum. I want at least 3 or 4 of things like a base, a port, a college, a hospital, a Boeing or Amazon terminal, a train or a beach added from this video, or a population of at least 100,000. So you're going to look for several different things so that something like the base can close and you still have tenants, or Boeing can move away and you still have tenants. You can track things like migration trends. You can go to U-Haul truck rentals, and it'll tell you this is the states our trucks are moving to. This is the states our trucks are moving from. It's usually a couple months old, but it's still data that you can use to figure out. Right now, everyone's in Arizona and Florida and Texas, so there's population growth there. A lot of people are leaving California, leaving Seattle, leaving San Francisco. That doesn't mean home prices are dropping in those areas, but the population is going down there. So population growth to me would be more important than population shrinking. So there's a lot involved to picking a market. It's not that I could say there's the best place, because I invest in Washington State because it's within an hour of where I live. I'm in Florida right now, but when I'm in Washington, I self-manage. I want to be able to drive to the property within an hour. I've house hacked twice. So that also involves generally investing where you live. Doesn't have to, because I was going to invest house hacking at a distance. I was looking at putting a truck driving school in Arizona or a truck driving school in Idaho. We settled on Idaho. Didn't settle. We chose Idaho. And we put a campus in Twin Falls, Idaho. So for a while, I was looking at buying a duplex, triplex, or fourplex there, and then house hacking back and forth between Washington. low owner occupied, low interest, down payment, fixed rate debt. So all of the benefits of house hacking, but I'm the boots on the ground because I'm going to be living there. And then I saw that they just had the coldest winter in 10 years, and I think I'll just visit that campus. I don't think I'll actually live there. Larry, you've said before you'd be willing to try review real estate investor mentor programs reasonable priced. Would you check into Joe Asamoah's tenant screening toolkit bundles 500 with his elite Section 8 tactics? I don't know that I would do that. That's something to consider. So right now, I haven't monetized sharing this information. I've monetized the channel, and the reason I explained that is I wasn't going to monetize YouTube, so there wasn't going to be any commercials on my videos. I would just put the videos up to answer questions. And then in October of 2020, YouTube announced that they were going to put commercials in all videos, even if it was a small channel that hadn't been monetized yet. So I monetized so I can control the type of commercials that go into my content. So if you've noticed, there's the little banners at the top and the bottom, and there's a first commercial that you can skip. There's no commercials that are a certain length that you can't hit skip on my channel because I don't like advertisements. One of my tricks for reaching financial independence is I have not seen a commercial in over 10 years. I only have streaming services that don't have commercials. Pay for the upgraded Hulu, HBO, Netflix, whatever it is. I just don't watch commercials because people with master's degrees and years of experience are tricking people into buying things they don't need. I don't often buy things I don't need. So I didn't want commercials on this. I did monetize Amazon affiliate because it doesn't cost the person anything. So if you've ever clicked on my video that says I'm purchasing, I want to see the locks that Dion uses on his rentals, then it puts a cookie on your computer, and for 24 hours, anything you buy on Amazon, I get a small piece of. I make more money off of that than I make off of YouTube. But a course or a book or something would be monetized because there's an expense to set it up and maintain it and manage it and run it. So I did things like take one rental at a time. I'm taking Chandler David Smith's because it's only like $100 or $200 or something. And I'm taking their courses because I like their content. And while I like Joe Asamoah's strategies, he's very specific for Section 8 in a high cost of living area. I don't do Section 8 in a really high cost of living area. It's just kind of an average area for me. So I don't know that I would take a $500 course as an investor for some information like his yet. Not that I don't like him. I've watched his BiggerPockets interviews, totally have respect for what he does. But one rental at a time has over 6,000 videos on his channel. Chandler David Smith has a ton of videos. You can get everything that's in their course. I guarantee, I haven't taken Chandler's course yet, but I guarantee everything that's in Michael Zuber's course, you can get by watching his videos, watching his experts, listening to us talk when we go on and talk about things. But it's 6,000 videos. To pay the few $100s to get narrowed down, chronologically placed, lesson formatted information, that's totally worth the cost of the course. Chandler's, I'm assuming, probably the same way. I'm going to take it and then I'm going to do a review on it. I even told him. It was really cool. And he said the same thing that Michael Zuber did. When I said, hey, I'm taking your course and I'm going to do a review. Mike said this like a year and a half ago, and Chandler said this about a month ago. Cool. Just be honest. Like, that's the best thing I could hope for. If either one of them had come back and said, oh, I'm going to take my course, can you please say this? Like, I would have been, I'm not going to tell people something you said. You want to run a commercial, you do that. Both of them in different words, different structured sentences, basically just said, cool, just be honest, which is a good sign. So I can look into Joe Asamoah's, but I don't know that I'm going to pay $500 to be able to give her a review on something like that, because it's not a strategy that a lot of people are going to use. Whereas Chandler's and Michael's and like Matt the Lumberjacks, where it's really generalized, anybody can take what we're learning. Some of the things that we can learn that people can take and do. Storage. How do you calculate yield? How do you most of these kind of strategies will fit. Section 8 and high cost of living is very targeted. So that would be my Cliff Notes version of a review without taking the course. Julie, howdy. Have a great night. Thanks. Cool. Have a good meeting. Abdul, howdy. Good evening. Abdul Mateen. Chester, administration, the people in office. There you go. Powers that be that for some reason want to get rid of the 1031 because They want to kill transactions. Daryl, howdy. Your name and your binder method was mentioned on the Section 8 Queen YouTube channel. I have never heard of that channel. I'm going to have to check that out. Let me take a note. Section 8 Queen? Was that what it was? Right, it's Section 8 Queen, yeah. Thanks for that. Gives me something else to check out. I like good recommendations on channels too. I have some channels that I recommend often, especially if you know anybody who's like 35 or less that you want to get interested. I don't know that showing them an old guy is the way to get them interested in this. I mean, maybe if you found like my video on I wish I had more debt because there's some humor in the video that they might get interested. Mike's close to my age. Matt's not too far behind us. Millennial Mike, the way his energy and the way he talks, that's somebody I would recommend to somebody who is younger. So I've got some channels if I have somebody that's younger. I've got channels if somebody wants to invest at a distance, Millennial Mike, Matsky Finance. If somebody wants to do specific strategies that I know goes to a certain channel, I'll definitely recommend it. Like I've talked about, I didn't know he had a course, but I've said, if you really want to know Section 8, check out Joe Asamoah, because that's what he does in Washington, D.C., where he's, it's $5,000 plus per month from Section 8 to pay for his houses. Yeah, so that's one I haven't heard of yet. Where was I at? Great night. Good evening, administration. Cool. And then Eric, don't need to worry about a 1031 with a trust. So you don't need to worry about inheritance laws. But even in a trust, when you sell an asset, you might, the 1031 might not be the thing, but if you don't put that money to work in the right way, you're still going to have tax obligations. But definitely trusts are the way to go. That's how Matt, the lumberjack landlord, does things. He doesn't use LLCs. He even does commercial lending through trusts. So trusts are, unless you have partners or need hard money, trusts, in my opinion, beat an LLC every time. Janelle, thank you. Deanna Chester, other random question. Thank you. Have you ever ran into a home that was supposedly haunted with ghosts? No. But if it was, and there was really good neighborhood awareness of it, I would still buy it. That would be my motivation to do a short-term rental, because you would have a target audience. Keith, where's the best place to hold your dry powder until you find that great deal? I wish I was more creative than this, but I have my money sitting in a pretty much no interest savings account, like 0.0012 or whatever the rate is. It's nothing. The amount that you can make in interest, to me, is not worth what it would take to tie your money up in anything or take risk that an asset could lose value when you need it. I just put it in a savings account. That's kind of motivation for me to find the next property, because I know I'm losing money to inflation. But yeah, just a regular savings account. Simple, super easy to reproduce. Doesn't take timing. What we're going to start seeing is CNN or Fox or somebody is going to talk about how raising interest rates help poor people. Because for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been able to get 0.02 or 0.04% interest on a savings account. In the 80s, before I had checking accounts, I remember my brother getting an 11% return on his savings account. 11% return just by putting money in the bank. So as interest rates go up, we might start seeing 1.5, 2% interest rate savings accounts when inflation is 8 or 10%. That is a bad way to do money. We shouldn't be saving for an interest rate. We should be saving while we're hunting for a place to put that money to work. That's what matters to me more than getting something out of that money while I'm saving it. So probably not the answer you were looking for, but that's how I see it. Chester. All the stimulus, extra unemployment, simply created excess demand. So now we have to have demand destruction to normalize or balance between supply and demand. Yeah, and I don't even know that it's going to do it. what we need is building. Everyone says population growth has slowed. True, but it hasn't stopped. Population is still growing. And go on Facebook. I wish I had the ability to share my screen here and look at the meme that talks about, or just Google the number of builds per decade for the last 5 decades. It's a chart that goes right up until the last decade, where it's literally a growing chart. And then in the last 10 years, it's less than a fifth of the decades before. We haven't been building. So the supply and demand is going to continue to be skewed. Drew, howdy. Dion, when you first started out, did you go more rent ready or fixer uppers? Michael Zuber says he wished he would have stuck with rent ready starting out. What is your opinion? So starting out brand new or right now, I look for rent ready or already occupied properties. I've never done a rehab. I have done a tenant flip, which I kind of call a rehab, but I didn't even I painted the cabinets and I painted the walls and I put in flooring. Like, I didn't do it. I painted that one, but I had other people do the flooring and stuff. I don't know why I painted it. I was just bored that weekend, I guess. Normally I'm too lazy for that. But I don't want to buy a property that needs work. I buy rent ready or preferably already occupied properties, from the first duplex I moved into until the one I'm looking for now. So I'm not getting the value add or the sweat equity, but I'm not having to use creative financing. I'm able to use conventional loans from the beginning. I've only had to refinance, and they say had to, but I've only refinanced when interest rates dropped by about 50%. I had 6% and they dropped to 3%, like 3.1. So I'm at 3.1 on some of my properties. So those are the only refinances I've done. I didn't pull any cash out. I just refinanced. So my opinion, rent ready or already occupied. I am an investor, not an entrepreneur. I'm not looking to do BRRRRs. I'm not looking to do upgrades. I'm not looking to do a bunch of that. I did purchase a property one time that needed a roof. I knew it. I added it to my cost to acquire. But to do the roof, it was 3 or 4 phone calls and 2 emails. I didn't even go to the property, and they just went and did the roof. So it's not like I went and did a rehab. But I knew that going in. So that's a good question. And my preference. Chester. Triniel, I'd say haunted houses are folklore, but I personally still wouldn't want to spend a night in one. I wouldn't have a problem with that. You're never afraid that you're alone in the dark. You are afraid that you're not alone in the dark. Dawn, howdy. Have you looked into FHA Title I loans? They are a signature loan up to $7,500 and $25,000 for a house, and up to $60,000 for a multifamily for fix-up. I have not, because I don't do fix-ups. I haven't even looked for those type of. I do have one search going for a BRRRR in case I could do a BRRRR, but I wouldn't start with it. I'm at the 10th year, financially independent. I have the down payment. I have the money to just do it without even using hard money. So I don't care about the after repair value. I don't care about refinancing. I don't care about. I literally buy it cash, rehab it with cash, and then refinance to take my money out if I could. So if I failed, I would just have money in the deal. I wouldn't be losing more money to hard money at a higher rate or anything like that. I haven't looked into those types of loans. FHA Title I loans, is that something like a 203K loan where you can get a loan for the property and then a loan for the rehab? Because the drawback to that is the contractor has to understand how the funds work, because they do part of the work, money, do part of the work, get the money, do part of the work, have to know how the paperwork works, has to be okay with that timeline. And when there's no work and contractors are starving, it's probably easy to find one willing to do that. In the last 5 years, with as much work as they've been trying to do, they're so busy, it'd be really hard to find one that was okay with doing work and then getting paid. But I don't even know if those are the same as the 203K loan. So, Drew, opportunity zones require an upgrade to the property equal to the price it was purchased at in order to get the tax benefit. Example, 100K purchase requires 100K upgrade. Info from a real estate CPA. Nice. That would be a great reason to add to why I haven't done opportunity zones. Not only government involvement that could change, but I don't do rehabs or upgrades. So, G Knife, howdy. Is there much variability in loan and origination fees between different lenders? Absolutely. I'll read the rest of your question. I ask because these amounts seem arbitrary all over the place between different loans, even the same lender. Absolutely. Same lender, different loan product, different week. So here, and this is going to be the order of operations video that I make. So if you see this, you don't have to watch that one because it's going to be the next 2 minutes. Order of operations for lending no matter what. First loan, 10th loan. I get pre-qualified by a large bank, Bank of America or Wells Fargo or something where they have standardized criteria, because other lenders will agree to lend to you if those banks have, without having to run your credit or see all of your documents. They know that if you're pre-qualified with a big bank with the most standard criteria, you'll meet their criteria. So then I start making offers on property. Once I make offers on properties, as I get one accepted, I then take that bank's offer in writing and I show it to all of the other lenders, Guild Mortgage, Fairway Mortgage, local credit union, or any other type of lender that I want to use, or another big bank if I feel like they might have a current deal that was better. I'm not just comparing interest rates. I'm going to give the other lenders a chance to see the rates, fees, and all of the charges that that first bank is going to have in writing. And I'm going to say, can you beat this? Sometimes they can beat the rate. Sometimes they can beat the buy down rate. So instead of $2,000 to buy it down, it's $500 and it buys down the same amount. Or their appraisal is half the price, or their mobile notary is $50 instead of $200, or whatever those fees are. If they can beat it, I have honor and I go back to the first lender and I say, here's an offer I have from someone else that's better than yours. If you want to keep my business, this is what you need to do. The first 3 purchases, Wells Fargo beat the other lenders and I stayed with them. Since then, the other purchases and the 2 refinances, Fairway Mortgage, not Guild Mortgage, Fairway Mortgage was able to keep my business. So I go back and forth every time, and it sounds like a whole bunch of work. So here's my confusion. If somebody was going to have a deck built on the outside of their house and the price was going to be somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000, they would probably talk to at least 3 contractors and get those 3 quotes in writing and then go with the one that made the most sense. $5,000 to $10,000, 3 contractors versus a 30-year commitment for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's less work to talk to those lenders. It's probably a total of 5 emails than it was to get 3 contractors with 3 quotes for a deck. My lender is actually the one who taught me how to do this. She worked at Wells Fargo and she said, I can't go to my boss and say, I really like Dion. Can we give him a better rate? But she says, if you go to another lender and get me their stuff in writing, I can go to my boss and say, look what we need to beat to keep his business. So she taught me how to do this. It is expected. It is an investor tool for you to use to get the best rates and fees. And you should do this every time you do a loan. Every time. That is the order of operations for lending, because rates and fees are totally arbitrary, just like you said. So the last 2 minutes is going to be what I do in a live stream sometime in the next week or so. It's just going to be a short, 2-minute clip of order of operations for lending so that somebody can find it without having to figure out that they were at the 2-hour and 42 mark of this video to see what I said again, because that wouldn't happen. So good question. Thank you. Keith. Why are you in Florida? Go to some open house. Oh, why are you in Florida? So they make some crazy offers and write off the expense. Put it in writing, though, and check with your if this is absolutely a write-off. This entire trip is a write-off. I am looking at properties. I am comparing markets. I am looking for YouTube places to shoot videos. Everything you do as a real estate person, when you go to another, I am comparing markets. I have friends who invest here. I'm looking at making deals. All of this will be a write-off. You're absolutely right. And I did check with the CPA and I do have it in writing and I do have an articulable defense as to why this is a write-off. Yes, the expense of the actual scuba dives, most of them are not going to be a write-off. A couple of them, when I go with a friend who is also an investor who I might be doing a deal with, I might figure out a way to get that in there, but I'm probably not going to push that. But this Verbo, I'm going to write off the $4,800, not the $10,000 that this one would have been worth, because I didn't actually pay that. But this is a full write-off versus YouTube income and real estate income. So that is a great idea. Glad you thought of that. Carrie, howdy. Cash flow goal. My goal was financial independence, which happened at $2,700 a month while I was house hacking. My first goal was 5,000 because it's a nice round number, and that was not a real number. It was just I picked a round number. I'm at 14 now, and I don't know that I have a goal. I have a goal of 10 mortgages in my name. So I think the cash flow then will be around 25,000 a month or so. Not that it was a goal. The goal was financial independence, and that happened. It didn't actually take very much because avoiding life creep was very important. House hack, buy paid off cars, save up and buy cars. I don't take a lot of trips. Like for the first almost 8 years of investing, I didn't take any vacations. It was at the 8th year that I was like, I'm going to go spend a month in Colombia. And then 9th year, I'm going to go spend a month in Thailand. And then last year, 2020, there was a pandemic, so I didn't do anything last year. I took a month and just drove across the country with my two brothers, and we just drove everywhere. And now I'm doing a month or two here in Florida, and I was still planning up until about 2 months ago. My brother and I were going to go and take a month in Russia. I don't think that's going to happen now. Yeah. So cash flow goal, don't know that I have one currently. Flash of light. Howdy. Are you putting off any renovation projects until we are further in the downturn to get cheaper materials and labor prices? Right now, I'm only doing urgent projects. I pretty much only do urgent projects. I don't do rehabs. I have a tenant turn that's coming up soon because a tenant recently bought a property. So congratulations to him or to them, him and her. So I'll have to do a tenant turn there, but I don't know that I really have any rehabs to do for that. That's the one where I painted the cabinets. I might do the cabinets. I've never done that before because they work. Because my properties are all Class C. So I look for safe, functional, and clean. I don't go for fancy. I don't want to have upgrades that aren't going to get me more rent. Safe, functional, clean. So I don't know that I'm putting anything off. When I first started investing, and I think most investors feel this way, I felt like I was paying for upgrades, or I was paying for tenant flips, or I was paying for repairs. And my live stream from last week was actually expenses do not impact cash flow. I wasn't paying for those things. I'm not paying for those things. When we purchase a property, we look for a yield. I'm going to get a yield. I shoot for a 10% or better. That's what I've been getting. And I watch the market. So if I ever all of a sudden started seeing 15 as a normal, I would look for 17s. If I started seeing 5 or 6 normal, I'd look for an 8. So I'm looking for a little bit better than area average, wherever that average is. That yield is after we pay principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and we set aside money for repairs, CapEx, and vacancy. If you have a property manager, you want to set aside for that too, but I self-manage. I'm setting aside gross rents every month that I look forward to spending. Tenant called me a couple months ago and said, hey, this garage door that's been here since the place was built is falling apart. And I spent a little over $2,000 for the thing and the tip to get the garage door put in. And now I have a brand new garage door that the tenants paid for. That was money, 10% and 5% for vacancy going into an account, filling up for me to use to repair. And now I have an asset that is better and newer. And when I put a roof on, same thing. The tenants are paying for those upgrades on my assets. So it's not so much that I'm putting off things because prices are so high. I would be more concerned with delay of product. A tenant called me a couple weeks ago about a refrigerator, and I was like, I'll get a refrigerator delivered. I think it was supposed to be delivered during one of my live streams. And I thought when I go to Lowe's, they're going to say, yeah, you want that refrigerator? It'll be 3 months. They had one in stock. So sometimes the availability of things might delay when something's going to happen, but not really the prices. If I had a project where I was looking at replacing all of the windows and it was just one of those things that kind of should be done, I would probably wait and see what happens with prices over the next year to see if supply chain problems are going to cause the price to stabilize or ever start coming back down. But if it was a broken window, I would just do it now. Karen, howdy. Thank you. Eric, aha. That video I sent you explained how the trust worked around the tax probability of a 1031 would expose you to. Oh, cool. So I didn't catch the benefits to a trust because it's still a sale of an asset to acquire another asset. I've always looked at trust as inheritance tools. I'll have to watch that video again. Greg, howdy. I live where the film The Walking Dead, a haunted house short-term rental would always be booked out. Right. And if you live in Forks, Washington, you can do a short-term rental and say there's vampires all around it. So capitalize on the urban legends in your area. David, howdy. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for showing up and watching. Mark, howdy. Why is using an LLC better with hard money? It's not better. It's often required. Hard money lenders will usually want you to own an LLC to borrow the money from. Some might work with a trust, but most have wanted an LLC. So it's not that it's better, it's that hard money lenders want you to have an LLC. So it's to satisfy the need of the lender themselves. In my opinion, the only time that an LLC benefits you is when you have partners. Yeah. Good question. I do have a video on my channel called the LLC Rant. So hopefully you can get a chance to check that out. Dawn, no, they are totally separate. The Title I loan is just for fix up, nothing else. It is a second mortgage. Oh, yeah, no, I haven't looked into those. Again, I don't buy places that need a lot of work. Like I'll buy a flip before I'll buy a burr usually. I'll hope the flipper makes their money. I'm getting, as long as I get the yield I'm looking for at the purchase, I would buy a wholesale or a flip. Haven't had any bring them to me yet, because any deal I found that was off market or somebody brought to me off market was a deal that was so bad they were embarrassed to put it on the MLS because it was way overpriced. Cool. Christine, howdy. You can pay the 203K contractor yourself after the HUD fees. It's done. The check will be sent in 2 weeks, but instead of it going to the contractor, just replenish your bank account. You can, and right, but when the funds are released, it's still released incrementally. And so the contractor usually has to know how they're going to prove to the lender that each part of the project was done. So depending on the scope of the thing, it could still be a pain. Not that it's not a bad idea. It's really cool. I like Kevin's earlier content, like from before 2 years ago. That's how he got into this. Owner occupied 203K loan where he did that. And so it's a very effective way of doing it. But it's not one that I've used. And mostly it's because I haven't done rehabs. Dawn, just talk about real estate and the scuba trip is a write-off as an entertainment potential client. Exactly. But also learning the markets here. I mean, I have no idea if I'm going to invest here or not. My friend Mark, he has a channel, Matsky Finance, lives here in Cape Coral, and he is trying to talk me and Millennial Mike into moving down here and living in the area. And I could totally see it. The area is nice. I don't know that I would come down here for a month or two and then buy here. I might do a year here in a long-term rental and then see if I want to buy. The traffic here is, I thought traffic was bad in Washington. The traffic is bad in Washington. The lights in Florida, you could listen into an entire podcast through the duration of each light. So you could be 3 streets from where you're going, and that's 12 minutes in 3 streets. I don't know if I want that. We'll see. Larry, if investors stay low in short term, would you consider using your dry powder as a private money lender in your local market? If someone at Tacoma Real Estate approached you with a great deal, nope, I don't want to be a private money lender. Pick your strategy and focus on it. I'm really good at getting a return and getting tenants to request a rent increase and managing properties and getting my cash flow where I want it. Like that, I have mastered that skill. If I was going to branch out into something else with my money, I don't know that it would be private money lending, because that means I would need to learn the skill of learning what a deal looks like from someone else's perspective and understand, can they do this deal? And if it fails, would I want this deal? And that's a whole nother skill to master, which I haven't looked into. I have some friends in the Seattle Investors Club mastermind group that's what they do. They do private money lending very successfully, but they don't do buy and hold rentals. They picked their rabbit and chased their one rabbit and got good at it. So I haven't looked at that. I did private money lending for no gain one time where my brother was buying a property on the courthouse steps, and he just called and he said, he got 40 grand. And I said, sure. So I gave him 40 grand. Then he bought the house and then he paid me back. I didn't charge him anything. So I don't know that that's really a loan. I think it was kind of cool to be a part of. So I wouldn't do that. But if you took the time to learn how it works, how to protect your money, how all the paperwork worked, and how to analyze a deal from someone. Because when I analyze a deal, I know my resources and my goals and how I can do it and my time commitment that I can do and my handyman and how I find contractors. I would be looking at how can this person do this with success? That's a skill I don't have. Ethan, howdy. Our pre-approval is taking 3 weeks plus just one bank. I can't imagine shopping rates. Would take months. It takes 5 seconds. You get pre-approved by a major bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. All of the other lenders that I've talked to, their criteria is less than Wells Fargo and Bank of America. I've never had one even question. Yep, if we see theirs, you're approved. And then once you go under contract with them, you say, I'm going to use them. Yeah, they'll run your credit to make sure what you gave them was factual. And they'll look for your documents too. But to switch those lenders, it's 5 or 6 emails in minutes. Here's what they're offering. Can you beat it? And then you get in writing their offer back and you show it. It is no work at all. It sounds like it takes way more time to explain how I shop lenders than it does to shop lenders, because those other ones don't run your credit. They don't check anything. They see a bank has you approved, they approve you. Then their underwriters will verify it later. It's never been an issue. And I've gotten the best rates every time. So don't overthink it. Don't think it's too much work. Don't think it takes too long. That first pre-approval, yes, that's the one that sucks. That bank, that large lender will take the time to get you pre-approved. Once they've done that, the other ones will work on their coattails. They'll say they've done the work. Their criteria is more strict than ours. So if they've approved you, we approve you. And then they verify it later. So you make sure everything that you gave the bank was actually true. Dawn, you can use the Title I loan to put on a roof or windows without using your own funds or lack thereof. Yeah, so that could be a good use for it. I, again, still haven't done that. Corey, howdy. Have you done an interest-only loan recently? No, but I'm looking into Convoy's 40-year fixed rate loan that has a 10-year interest only and then 30-year regular amortized loan. So I'm looking into do that. I think it's a really bad idea if you are buying a primary house and you think it's possible that you might sell in the next 5 years. You're giving up principal pay down. Appreciation is still a thing. Cash flow is still a thing, but you're giving up principal pay down for those 10 years. So an example, in 2021, I was having about an average of $3,000 a month in principal pay down. So $36,000 of net worth gained from principal pay down with 6 mortgages, total of 7 properties, right? So I had cash flow in 6 figures, but $36,000 in principal pay down. That's nice. Doesn't hurt. My appreciation for last year was over $600,000. So I made way more money in appreciation than I made at my W-2, than I made in cash flow, and than I made in principal pay down. So for me, I'm very happy doing an interest-only loan. I would do a 1,000-year loan interest only as long as it cash flowed and I got the appreciation. I'd be fine with that. But a homeowner on their primary who might sell within the next 5 years, where you might not even have enough appreciation to cover the at least 8% that you're going to pay in seller's fees and closing costs as a seller, that's risky. You might have to cut a check to sell an asset. Ouch. So I don't recommend it for home buyers that could possibly have to sell in 5 years or less. I'm a buy and hold investor with plans of never selling. I have a paid off property. I have 6 properties with mortgages. I don't ever plan on paying them off early. I'm letting the tenants do that over 30 years. I have refinanced to lower rates without pulling any money out. My goal is not even to take the equity and put it to work. It was to take money and put it to work in the properties and let the cash flow grow to reach financial independence. And now I'm working on financial freedom, which will happen. So I haven't done an interest-only loan recently, but I'm looking into the Convoy version of that. Janelle, you, sir, always earn my like. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate the 56 likes that we have so far here tonight. And I appreciate that earlier in this video, at about the 20-minute mark, this helped hit the 9,000 subscriber mark. I appreciate every single person that hit subscribe on there. That is awesome. Hopefully everyone here thinks the same and likes the video. Thank you for all you do. So what I like to say, Rankin, howdy, is if my content earns a like, hit it. And if it doesn't, if you hate this, hit the dislike, but hit it twice to let me know that you just hated it. Dominic, howdy. Thank you for the video. Thanks for hanging out and watching. Appreciate it. Delbert, howdy. Ethan, interesting. Thank you. Dawn, I'm leaving smarter as always. Can't thank you enough, Dion. Have a great night. Thank you. Have a great night, Dawn. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. Monica, thank you for all the information you give us. You help me a lot. Do you have any idea, recommendations on how we can get an advisor to help us individually? I almost recommend not doing that. Like, I mean, if you take the Michael Zuber One Rental at a Time course and you pay for the mentorship where you get that he reviews your portfolio, if you have a portfolio, that's probably great. But nobody has your goal, your resources, and your experience. When I first started investing, I have a friend who is still a great friend, right? He had 30 rental units. He had 19 real estate agents working for him in his office. He ran the office. He'd been investing for decades. He's completely financially free. Since then, he has retired. So he's financially free now and has over 30 rental units. But he was my friend. He was an agent. And when I first started talking to him, I thought, oh, I've got a mentor. I've got a person who can tell me exactly how to do this. Like, he's done what I want to do. He didn't use mortgages. He'd been investing for a long time. He'd used cash. He ran an office, so he waited for the best deals to walk in the door, got great deals. He'd never invested in small multifamily, so he hadn't used mortgages and he hadn't invested in small multifamily. The first couple of deals that he brought me that I was making offers on based on his recommendation would have bankrupted me. I would have lost everything and never continued investing. So I don't know that you can get one-on-one mentoring that will actually benefit you that's worth money. I think watch BiggerPockets, watch One Rental at a Time, watch Lumberjack Landlord, Millennial Mike, me, watch all of these educational channels of people who've done it. Study Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, Grow Rich, Richest Man in Babylon, kind of get that, Set for Life by Scott Trench. Get those books, listen to the audiobooks, read them, however it works for you. Once you have a basic idea and you pick a strategy, flipping, wholesale, BRRRR, short-term, long-term, local, at a distance, storage, buy and hold, whatever strategy resonates the most with you, then look for somebody who's done it and watch their content or ask them questions. But even then, I don't know that I would say, can you coach me individually? Instead, I think it's study the broad, all of the aspects to pick the market, the strategy that works best for you. And then you have a better chance of picking and targeting your information sources instead of a person helping you. Kind of like I get emails often where people say, I really love your content. You're helping out so much. Can you please mentor me? How much do you charge? So I work full time. I have 3 kids. They're older now, but I self-manage 16 rental units. I run a nonprofit. I like to have a life. I come down here and scuba and take trips and stuff. So how much is my time worth to mentor somebody, right? Nothing. Because I don't have that person's resources or goals or history to give them advice that's good enough to actually feel comfortable charging them money for it. So I haven't done that. And I don't know that I would. So anybody who is, without absolute transparency of them saying, I don't think I'm going to be able to help you, but let's spend some time together, and this is how much it costs, I don't recommend doing that. I think it's self-education and then actually take action. You are going to learn more throwing $12,000 at a bad deal than you would using $12,000 on some course or some mentor. That's just my opinion. Hopefully that helps. Sorry, Monica, if that wasn't the answer you were looking for. I know it would be nice if somebody would kind of like handhold us kind of through the process. But you date your agent, you date your lender, you marry the properties, you date your mentor. They're not stuck with that property at the end of that closing. You are. So I think only you can educate yourself and make the right decision. Willie, howdy. I have a 3-unit property in New York, which cash flows enough to pay itself and my personal property. I also have about $350,000 in equity. I was thinking about doing a home equity line of credit to buy more rentals in Florida. If you can get a fixed rate home equity line of credit that you would have paid off before the 10-year term or whatever the fixed rate amount duration is, maybe. Is a cash out refinance better because you get 30-year fixed rate debt, possibly a better interest rate? But the question to me is always, before I sell, refinance, HELOC, or anything like that, do I have a place to put the money to work? Have you learned a market in Florida? Have you figured out what the yield is? Have you figured out how much your down payments, or would you purchase in cash? What is the competition like? All of that work to figure out the end goal first. Where's this money going to go, and am I going to be able to put it to work before you take the money out? So kind of reverse engineer that, and that'll tell you if it's worth it or not. If you look and you find a whole bunch of deals, that'll get you a yield, because the yield has to be enough to justify the debt on the new asset and the debt on the old asset. Remember, you're decreasing the cash flow on the existing asset to buy the new one. So it's got to be a good enough return to justify both of those debts. Hope that helped. Christine, how did you pay off your properties so quickly? I've only paid off one, and it's called the income snowball. So I wasn't making a lot. I moved from my house into a duplex, lived there for 2 years to get rental income on my tax returns by renting out the house. That allowed me to buy a duplex where the lender would use the rental income from the other side in my debt to income ratio, allowing me to start buying rental properties. So it was 2 years between then. Then it was 2 years to buy the next one, and then a little less than 2 years because I started getting cash flow from the rental, reduced my housing expenses in that duplex, a cash flowing duplex, and it starts to add up. Then I bought another duplex, and I had 4 mortgages in my name. And early in between 2013, 2015, in that era, you were allowed to have 4. They wouldn't let you go up to 10. Lenders were so scared from the 2008 crash that 4 was the limit. So when I got to 4, I decided I'm going to take all the extra cash flow, all the money from overtime and everything, and I'm just going to focus on, and I used the debt avalanche and the debt snowball from Dave Ramsey. It was my highest interest rate loan. It was like 6.1%. And it was my smallest loan. It was the single family. And it was only like $121,000 that I still owed, because that was when I decided to pay it off. I just funneled every single penny of cash flow and overtime and side hustle money into paying that off over the next year. Once it was paid off, that house is now rented to a Section 8 tenant at $2,200 a month and paid off. The taxes and insurance is like $200. I set aside $200 for repairs, so I'm cash flowing $1,800 on just the house. So all the other cash flow started to add up. The next purchase was a year later, and then a year later. So now I'm at 7 properties with 1 paid off. So it sounds like I paid off a lot really quick. I've only paid off 1, and it was because I took all of the cash flow from all the aggregate sources from the income snowball. The more cash flowing assets you acquire, the easier it becomes to acquire cash flowing assets, and paid off that property. It's the one that Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord suggested I should do a cash out refinance to have money to put to work if deals start to pop up. They have some paid off properties, like a safety net. That's my only one. So I didn't follow their advice, and I still have that paid off property. And I'm working my way up to 10 mortgages in my name because they raised 2 things happened. They increased the amount that you can have from 4 mortgages to 10, and interest rates went from 6% down to 3%. So now they're creeping back up to where if interest rates got really high, I might pay one off or pay one down at that rate. The higher the interest rate, the more likely it is for me not to want to have that much leverage on it. At the interest rate of 3 or 3.1%, it never makes sense to pay that off early. Inflation is twice that right now or more. So that's how that worked. And I'm really glad, Christine, I think we met recently, and this is your first time on the channel. So thanks for coming to a live. I appreciate this. And I'll probably be wrapping it up here pretty soon because I know on the East Coast where I'm at, it's 10:09 at night. So some of the people are starting to fade and disappear, which I totally understand, especially if they've been here for 3 hours. Chester, what are average closing costs? I've heard everything from 2 points to a whopping 8 points. Is it agent dependent? You're using an average to estimate whether you get the deal or not. And we're really never accurate. When we say things like, I want to get a 10% cash on cash return my first year, we're saying if everything was perfect. But we're usually leaving out stuff like, I'm going to collect rent for that month before my mortgage is due. That's not included in my return. I want, what would my average yield be if everything was just static for that year? We're not trying to figure out what are we going to make? What is the dollar amount we're going to profit? We're trying to figure out as close to, if everything was the same, apples to apples, of these 5 properties, which is the one I should go after? So which is the best one? So that's why when we say closing costs, you've done a few, my average seems to be around 5%. So if I'm buying a $500,000 property, I'm going to spend 5% on closing costs. If it's 400,000, if it's 600,000, I'm going to adjust it up and down. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more, but it's an average. So you can maybe have it different in your area depending on, does your area have flood insurance or earthquake insurance or something that's going to impact the insurance a lot, or if you have an HOA, which I don't invest in properties in HOA, so there could be different things that you look for to affect that. I would ask the lenders in your area what seems to be the closing average in this area and see what they say, and maybe ask a couple of different ones until you've done a couple of deals, and then you'll have a basic idea of what average should be. And then a lot of that can change through time. 2 years ago, I was paying $600 for an appraisal, and now it's $1,300 for an appraisal. So it's over double. It's not a lot. It's not a lot when you talk percentage wise versus a $800,000 whatever, but it is an increase. Dawn, I bought a house in 2005 where the owner had to come to closing with 36,000. Right, and so people are doing that now, especially if they waive the appraisal or the demand is there. They might not even waive the appraisal. They might just say, "I'm going to cover the difference because I want the house that bad." That gap coverage can be rough. Chester, what? Was that $1 million property? It just depends on where the appraisal was. Dawn, no, it was a single family house that I bought for 100,000. If I remember right, it was when you could do liar loans. I even got less than 100,000 or than 1,000 cash back. Yeah, so lending is different and it's unique every time. Dawn, I have been in real estate for over 40 years and Dion is spot on. To Monica, thank you. Awesome. Angel, this is the longest live you've done. We're just passing it. I did 3 hours and 12 minutes one time. Actually, I have a 4-hour live. I do. I love it. I'm like I said, I go till the questions stop. So whenever you guys get tired and I'll start to pass out, or if I pass out, someone call me and wake me up. What's my favorite rum? I am not a rum fan. I OD'd on it when I was 12, like 3 days of OD. Should have been stomach pumped in the hospital. So I'm more of a vodka drinker. And I don't even really have a favorite. I just have a whatever's in front of me kind of choice. Keith. Absolutely, Dion. Time in leverage after 5. We are paying off one each year and buying one each year. Nice. So you have a plan that works for you, and paying one off does increase your equity position, and it increases your cash flow. It decreases the amplification of leveraged appreciation, though. So at some point, you might look at that and think, well, does it make sense to pay off a 4% interest loan? Probably not. But if you have a 6 or a 7 like we're getting now, that might make sense to pay it off. That's a good enough return to justify it. The problem is in 2 years, if interest rates come down, it would make more sense to refinance that and get the cash flow to where you need it. Do what works for you, because This is a quote from one of my daughters. It's one of my favorite things that she's ever said. She said, "It's really hard to make a decision when both outcomes are positive. It's easier if something sucks and something's great, like you know what to do. But if both are kind of nice, like one is going to cash flow better, one is going to appreciate better, I don't know. Those are hard decisions." Uh, Larry, besides scuba, what have you been your favorite things done in Florida? Friends got a boat, uh, and they've got another one coming. And so going through the canals out to the islands for breakfast, seeing the manatees and the dolphins and that stuff isn't in Washington. Um, the the restaurants are great during the week, Monday through Friday. Like the tiki bars here are great. The food's great. The weekends, I just am shut in, lock the doors, stay in the house. It's too many people. It's too peoply during the weekends here. Um, but I'm not doing much else. I really came down here to scuba till I'm bored. Still working on it. I'm trying to watch how much of the sunburn happens. I feel like I'm red everywhere. Pallavi, still here, 912. Can't miss all that great questions and information. Thank you. Dawn, I thought you had a 4-hour. Yeah, I had a 4-hour a couple of weeks ago or something. So we're still working on it, which is whenever you guys get bored. Price and Pride. Howdy. Do you have to get an investment loan if you plan to rent it out and aren't able to use it as a primary second home, or are there other options? I have had some people who purchase a place and then one of their kids move in, making it owner occupied. I think somehow they have them on the loan. You have to intend to live in the property. No one's going to check where you live. Really think of it more as a time delay device. When you get an owner occupied loan, you can't get another one for 12 months without something weird like life-changing event, change jobs or something, new orders in the military or something. So I'm not saying commit fraud and say, oh, I plan on moving in there and then just not moving in there. But there can be justifiable reasons. I have a friend who purchased a place and was going to move in, going to owner occupy, ended up having to evict one of the tenants. The tenant was kind of threatening, and then they didn't want to move into the house because the threatening person would know where they live, and the lender was like, okay, fine. So there are sometimes mitigating circumstances to not have to owner occupy. Second home is an option. There are lenders who will do lower down payments on investment properties. You just have to lender shop to find the right ones. So it's not always all lenders are the same and all lenders want 20 or 25% down. You can lender shop that way for investment properties. The best loan products, though, are intended for owner occupied. So sometimes owner occupy, rent out rooms, and just keep one room for yourself there. Have it be your place that's on your taxes, your whatever the utilities are in your name, whatever you can do to prove that that's your residence. But you can rent out rooms there too. So I mean, there's a lot of ways. I'd be really careful. Don't commit fraud. It's better. I've house hacked twice, so those were 2 owner occupied loans. The rest were investment properties. Took longer to save up the down payments, and the interest rate was a little bit worse. But it sure beats going to prison. Although prison is the ultimate house hack. They even provide food, which you don't always get with a house hacker. All the sex you don't want. It's kind of like high school. Jones, howdy. You're in Iowa or for TMC orientation. Nice. Cool. Hope it goes well. Dawn, I just got non-QM loans for night at 7% just to not have a prepayment penalty to refinance when rates come back down. Good. Jason, no wrestling gators. No, I actually haven't seen any this time. The last time I was down here, because I went to the Keys, there was a bunch of gators, but I'm in Cape Coral. I haven't seen them here yet. What are those lizards that are this long? I forget what they're called. Yeah, some kind of giant green lizard, but no alligators yet. So, Chester, you picked a great People Week at spring break this week. Oh, nice. That would explain it. Larry, it is zoning board or building department where one finds out the local laws of renting rooms. I don't think it would be building department or zoning. Where would I find out renting rooms? City codes. You probably have a website that has your city codes because it's different in each area. They might be worded weirdly. There was WACs for Washington code, was for revised codes, and then the city might have its own codes. That's where I would look those up. So if somebody else knows a better way to find rent by room regulations, put it in the comments, because there are some areas where they limit the number of not related people who can live in a place, usually to 3. So if you had 4 roommates that weren't related, that's breaking the code. Makes it not an Airbnb, a bed and breakfast or whatever this boarding house. They call it a boarding house. They're trying to get rid of those. The current administration is trying to get rid of the regulations that limit the number of non-related people who can live in a rental in a residence together. But there are still some places that still hold true to it. So I wish I had a better answer for you. Iguana? Okay. I was going to call them chuckawalla, but that's a Southern California lizard we used to catch. So iguana. Yep, that is what they look like. The eggs are delicious. I haven't tried those yet. Christine, your lender suggested not locking in interest rates because of the large upfront cost, even though rates are rising. Interesting. I don't think I've ever had a lender, no matter the day, no matter rates were going up or down, that didn't say, we should lock these in today because horrible, bad things are going to happen next week, like their mantra. So you have a different type of lender. I don't know if they're right or wrong, though. There is an upfront fee for locking in rates. And the Fed has talked several times that they do plan on increasing rates. So depending on between now and when you think you're going to have a property under contract, I don't know that I would want to lock it in, because after some of the lenders at 45 days, you have to pay the fee again to lock it in again. Yeah. I would ask maybe 1 or 2 other lenders what they think in your area and see if they agree with your current lender. So we are at the 3 hour and 21 minute. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes if there's any more questions to put into the chat. I really appreciate everybody who came and hung out tonight. I've got to figure out what's going on with my camera, because it's weird. I want to do live streams outside here during the day, just some short ones on my phone where I won't be able to answer any questions, but I'm going to do some short streams on some concepts that as an investor we should just have in our subconscious. We should just know what to do with lending. We should just know how to set rents, and we should, things that we shouldn't have to Google and look up. So I want to be able to do the live streams, stream of consciousness, not edited, so that people can see that this is what an investor holds in their mind, so that you can make decisions. So when you see a property on the MLS pop up or somebody calls you with a deal, you can run most of these calculations in your head because you make it second nature. It's kind of cheating when I make a 10-minute video and you can tell I talk for 30 seconds, I look at some notes, I talk for 30 seconds, I look at some notes, and the information is good, but that means it wasn't second nature. Like I had to research the information. So that's why I want to do some short live streams for that. Flash of light. My town actively looks for boarding house ads on Airbnb, and code enforcement busts them. Yeah, that is what you'll find. Price and pride. I would run from that lender when the rates are rising like crazy now. Yeah, I don't know if I'd run from them, but I'd probably want to lock it in. They might just want you to have a higher rate, which doesn't really make sense because they lend on margin. So it's not like they're going to get more. Larry, in New Orleans, gator sausages are delicious Cajun appetizers. I do love Cajun food. I actually haven't found any Cajun restaurants here. Wherever I go, I find the pho restaurants. That's the first one to hit. But I should find some Cajun around here. There's got to be something. Anybody that lives around Cape Coral, tell me the good restaurants to eat at. Phil, thank you. Thanks for hanging out. CJ, thanks for the great content. Angel, thank you. Cool. All right. I am going to give it 2 more minutes. And see if there's any more questions. If there are, great. Speaking of second nature things in real estate, I'm about to start reading Brandon Turner's The Book on Rental Property Investing. I've heard lots of good things about it. I usually have that at my desk to show. It's one of the ones that I have sitting there, but I'm not at my desk. So that's a good one. It was written by him and his wife. And his wife at the time was the property management person. So a lot of it was how she did the day-to-day. So I think you'll like it. Cool. Thanks again, everybody, for hanging out for tonight. I think we will call it there. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.